In the beginning of this circle, there are no thrones, no podiums, no invisible rankings written in code. There is only a room full of hearts that have not yet remembered they are beating together. There is only a civilization on the brink, pretending it is normal to be lonely in a crowd, exhausted in abundance, starving in a banquet of noise. Tonight, we stand inside a different experiment. You were not summoned here as consumers of a show, but as co-authors of a moment that did not exist before you walked in. Every breath you take from now until the last note fades will be part of a living document written in nervous systems, not in ink. We will not sell you escape. We will not sell you numbness dressed as joy. We have come instead to attempt something dangerously unfashionable. To feel this era together, with our minds switched on and our hearts left undefended. Look around you, quietly, without shame. Every stranger in this room is a moving library of unshelved stories, childhoods that did not go as planned, bodies that have carried more than they were designed for, lineages that remember forests where parking lots now stand. The myth of the isolated individual, grinding alone toward a private salvation, is collapsing under its own weight. The truth is simpler and far more terrifying. We rise or fall in patterns, not in fragments. Systems break us. Systems can also be rewritten. We have been trained to believe that meaning trickles down from somewhere above us, from screens, from institutions, from a class of experts, from leaders who ask for our faith and return our attention in the form of spectacle. But tonight, there is no distance between the stage and the floor that sound cannot erase. The microphones do not make us superior, they simply make us audible. The question that matters is not, will the band perform? The question is, will the room awaken? So we begin with a covenant, simple and severe. We agree not to abandon ourselves when the music reaches the memories we buried. We agree not to laugh off the truths that land too close to the bone. We agree to treat each other not as background scenery in our personal movie, but as fellow witnesses on the same unstable planet, breathing the same anxious air, dreaming of the same impossible future where no one is sacrificed to keep the machine running smoothly. If you have come carrying grief, you are not a disruption to the vibe, you are one of its essential instruments. If you have come carrying rage, let it be rage in service of life, not in service of humiliation. If you have come numb, exhausted, dissociated from your own story, know that your numbness itself is a rational response to unreasonable conditions. Nothing in you is broken beyond revision. Outside this room, the world is managed by metrics that cannot measure the things that matter most. There are no spreadsheets for courage, no quarterly reports for tenderness, no profit margins on the moment a person chooses to live one more day. But inside this circle, we are allowed to reassign value. Inside this circle, a single honest exhale is worth more than 1,000 curated images. Inside this circle, we remember that attention is a sacrament, and we offer it deliberately. This is the proposal. Let the algorithms starve for one night. Let the empire of distraction proceed without you, just for these few hours. Let every notification wait. Let every manufactured urgency lose its grip. Instead, give your full, undivided, inconvenient presence to the people in this room and to the sounds we are about to summon. Not because we are special, but because you are. You are not an audience. You are a field. When the drums begin, do not ask, do I like this song? Ask, what part of me is this rhythm trying to wake up? When the words arrive, do not evaluate them as content, test them as tools. If a lyric helps you tell the truth about your life, keep it. If it does not, let it pass through you like weather. No art deserves worship, at best. art deserves partnership. We will move through grief and fury, through memory and vision, through the ruins of old systems and the blueprints of new ones. Some of it will be beautiful, some of it will be uncomfortable, all of it will be honest. And when the last resonance dies out into silence, the real performance will begin. The choices you make after you leave. For now we stand at the edge of the spiral, at the threshold between the world as it is and the world as it could be if enough of us refuse to stay asleep. Take one breath for yourself. Take one breath for the people you love. Take one breath for the ones you have lost. Take one breath for the generations not yet born, who will inherit whatever we fail to transform. This is the opening of the circle. This is the moment before the fire. Guard it. Remember it, build for it. We begin.
We were born into borrowed clocks and rented names, into a culture that teaches endurance before belonging, into rooms where the question must shrink to survive, into systems that call exhaustion a virtue and branded success. We learn to whisper our hunger into acceptable shapes, to call distance independence, to call numbness peace, to call survival a personal achievement, while the architecture of isolation quietly multiplied. But the marrow remembers another syntax, a grammar older than markets and metrics, where every voice mattered because every voice was needed, where the fire was not decoration but infrastructure, where the circle was not a metaphor but living law, where the measure of a life was not productivity but the depth of its contribution to the shared flame.
We arrived tonight at the edge of that forgotten script.
Oh,
we arrived tonight at the edge of that forgotten script.
oh,
We arrived tonight at the edge of that forgotten script.
oh,
We arrived tonight at the edge of that forgotten script.
we arrived tonight at the edge of that forgotten script. Outside, the age of distraction hums like a fever dream. Inside, we are attempting something unspectacular and radical, to feel this era with our minds switched on and our hearts left undefended. We have mistaken endurance for holiness, silence for safety, repetition for stability, and despair for realism. But beneath the static, a signal has always remained, waiting in the sternum, bright as an ember in wet ash, too small to heat the house, too honest to die. The fire returns when the lie runs out of fuel. The fire returns when the future refuses the terms of the past. The fire returns when enough bodies choose presence over permission, when obedience is finally recognized as a poor substitute for trust. Fire is not only destruction, fire is the great editor. It does not hate the forest, it restores the conditions for light. It devours only what has forgotten how to grow. What we burn tonight is not the people. We burn the scripts that taught the people to doubt their own pose. We burn the training that turned neighbors into competitors, that turned help into weakness and dominance into virtue, that turned rest into guilt and tenderness into risk.
Oh, look at your hands,
They predate the laws that try to manage them.
Your predator, look at your breath.
It has outlived every empire you have ever heard
Your
of.
predator.
Look at the person beside you. Their fear is as rational as yours. Their hope is fragile and as ferocious. None of you are accidental, yet all of you are unfinished. You are intersections of improbable survival, living evidence that chaos can learn to sing. We do not live in neutral weather. We live in storms designed to keep us distracted. They taught us to curate ourselves instead of inhabit ourselves, to speak in branding instead of truth, to measure our days in numbers that never loved us back outside. The feed scrolls on without us, indifferent. Inside, the question is simple and severe. Will we remain spectators of our own century, or will we interfere with the script? We do not need another savior polished for spectacle. We do not need another anthem that mistakes noise for power. We do not need another hierarchy dressed up as hope. We need witnesses who stay when the rhythm grows inconvenient. We need neighbors who can hold grief without monetizing it. We need leaders who know how to step down. Outsourcing our courage. Courage. The fire returns when we stop waiting to be chosen. The fire returns when the risk becomes lighter than the silence. When your own reflection finally refuses to endorse your shrinking. It returns when you speak a truth that costs approval, but buys your voice back from the market. When strangers recognize one another as kin, through nothing more exotic than synchronized breath. This is not an anthem for a victory already secure. This is the sound of a culture standing up mid-trial. The circuitry of inheritance closing a long broken loop. This is what it feels like when memory wakes in the bloodstream. Not nostalgia, not revolution as fashion, but the slow, irreversible turn of people toward each other again. If you are afraid, keep breathing. If you are tired, keep breathing. If the old resignation tries to reclaim its throne in your chest, the voice that swears nothing truly changes, remember that resignation is the final luxury of the comfortable. Change has always belonged to those with no spare illusions. The fire does not guarantee comfort. The fire guarantees contact. Contact with what is real. Contact with what is burning. Contact with what refuses to die quietly inside you. Lift your voice not as a performance, but as a signal to the others who still remember they were not born to need. Lift your voice. There is a space between the injury and the story we tell about it. A narrow corridor where the body still remembers how to breathe. Before the mind rushes in with explanations, blame, and armor, most of us were taught to skip that space entirely.
sprint from pain straight into performance, to translate sensation into narrative as fast as possible, so we would not have to feel it long enough to learn its language. But the body keeps score in a dialect older than words, and every uninhabited wound becomes a pressure system that eventually alters the weather of a whole life. We learn to hold ourselves together with tension, to call hypervigilance a personality trait, to call exhaustion a moral credential, to mistake chronic alertness for strength. We built our identities around bracing for impact, around anticipating harm before it arrived, around rehearsing catastrophe as a form of preparation. But preparation that never rests becomes a cage, and a cage that feels familiar still cancels flight. There is a breath between the strike and the scar, between the memory and the reflex, between the grief and the script. It is brief. It is quiet. It is almost never acknowledged. And yet it is where all revision becomes possible. You do not heal by outrunning what happened. You heal by staying long enough for the nervous system to realize the danger is no longer present even while the memory remains. Safety is not the absence of recollection. Safety is the return of choice inside recollection. Every addiction begins as an attempt at self-regulation. Every compulsion begins as a workaround for a system that never learned how to self-soothe. We are not broken machines. We are organisms that adapted too well to unreasonable conditions. What once kept us alive now keeps us trapped. The breath between wounds is the moment when the old adaptation pauses and a new one becomes thinkable. Breathe here. Not as an instruction, as an invitation back into the body you learn to abandon for the sake of surviving the day. Let the inhale be boring. Let the exhale be ordinary. Do not optimize it. Do not perform it. Just let it arrive and leave like weather that does not require interpretation. We were taught to fear stillness because stillness is where the echoes live. But echoes are not enemies, they are unfinished sentences asking for room to land. What was never allowed to conclude itself now repeats until it is witnessed. The breath does not erase the echo. It gives it a place to exit the body without devastation. Between fight and flight there is a third motion, attunement, the ability to remain present without collapsing or attacking. It is not passive. It is an advanced skill learned by those who have decided not to spend the rest of their lives flinching in advance. You are allowed to pause without apology. You are allowed to rest without explanation. You are allowed to be slow in a world addicted to velocity. Urgency is not the same as importance. Silence is not the same as absence. Stillness is not the same as surrender. The body that shakes after danger is not malfunctioning. It is completing the cycle it was designed to complete. The body that goes numb is not defective. It is conserving energy for a threat it still believes is active. Correcting the body without correcting the story is how we medicate the smoke while feeding the fire. There is a breath between the memory and the meaning. There is a breath between the trigger and the reaction. There is a breath between what happened and who you are now. That breath is not dramatic. It will not trend. It will not make a good slogan. It will, however, quietly return you to yourself. You do not have to forgive to breathe. You do not have to explain to breathe. You do not have to translate to breathe. You only have to stop holding the moment together with force. Notice how the lungs do not ask whether the air deserves to be taken in. Notice how the heart does not require certainty before it contracts. Notice how the body continues to choose life, even when the mind is undecided. This is not optimism. This is physiology. This is the oldest argument for your continuation. The breath between wounds is not a cure, it is a threshold. It is the narrow bridge where sensation becomes information instead of command. It is where the past loosens its grip just enough for the present to reassert itself as real. Stay here long enough and the system recalibrates. Stay here long enough and the tremors become messages instead of threats. Stay here long enough and the space between what you feel and what you do begins to widen. In that widening, choice re-enters. And when choice re-enters, so does dignity. And when dignity re-enters, so does agency. And when agency returns, the wound is no longer the author of your future. There is a breath between the wound and the world. Take it.
We were taught to speak of the earth as a backdrop, as if the ground were a stage and not a bloodstream, as if the rivers were decorations and not circulatory systems, as if the sky were a ceiling instead of a witness. They taught us to say environment like it was something outside us, a category, a resource, a political abstraction, not the original architecture of our own selves. But the body does not agree with the textbooks. The body remembers what it is made of. Calcium in the bone once moved through limestone. Iron in the blood once slept in the red dirt of mountains. Salt on the skin once belonged to ancient seas. Every breath is a relic of forests we never met. Every heartbeat is borrowed from a star that exploded long before we learned how to count time. We are not standing on the earth. We are the earth, briefly organized into names. They paved the memory and called it progress. They measured the forest in board feet and quarterly return. They taught us to see land as property instead of kin, to see water as a commodity instead of instruction, to see animals as inventory instead of parallel intelligence. They taught us to inherit the harvest without remembering the hands, to eat without touching the soil that fed us, to grow up without ever learning the language of seasons. The children now learn the planet through screens. They know the icons of rain before they know its smell. They know the word climate before they know the feel of mud. They learn extinction as a chapter before they learn references of verb. And we wonder why their nervous systems feel like alarms. We severed the feedback loop between the body and the living world and prescribed chemicals for the confusion that followed. But the root still knows what the branch forgot. The seed still carries the memory of forest. The soil is not dead matter. It is a crowded intelligence of bacteria, fungi, insects, water decay and inheritance. Speaking in exchange is too small for our empires to notice. The forest does not compete, it collaborates. It feeds what feeds it, it composts what falls apart. It wastes nothing because it understands time. We were designed under those same rules, to exchange instead of hoard, to shed instead of harden, to return when we were spent. But we built cities as if the cycle were a flaw, as if extraction without return were a sustainable prayer. We built systems that take without listening, that grow without humbling, that feed without gratitude, and then act surprised when the balance answers back. The storms are not angry, the fires are not vengeful, the drought is not moral, the floods are not political. That feedback, they are the language of a living body responding to injury at scale. They are what happens when the wound is allowed to widen long enough that it becomes impossible to ignore. We do not face an environmental crisis, we face a relationship crisis. We forgot the terms of the original contract, that what we take must be returned in another form, that what we change must be listened to, that what we poison will eventually speak through us. There is no outside where consequences go to disappear. There is only circulation. Touch the ground with your hands, not as a symbol, as recognition. Feel how it does not flinch from your weight. Feel how it receives you without asking for credentials. Feel how it holds the story of every footstep that ever imagined permanence. The soil does not judge you for what you forgot. It only waits for what you will remember. We built a world that eats faster than it replenishes. We built a temple that outruns regeneration. We built an economy that confuses
acceleration with growth, but biology measures success differently. It measures success by continuity, by whether the children of the children can still breathe here, by whether the water still answers thirst, by whether the ground still knows what to do with the dead. We are not meant to dominate a living system. We are meant to participate in it. We are not meant to own the field. We are meant to tend it. We are not meant to live above the land. We are meant to live as one of its temporary expressions. We are the soil that was taught to forget itself. We are the river that learned its name from a pipe. We are the forest that learned to count in dollars. We are the animal that learned to call its cage normal. And still, beneath the asphalt and instruction, the older intelligence persists. It is patient. It is uncompromising. It will outlive this era of misunderstanding. The only question it leaves us is not whether the earth will survive. The question is whether we will remember ourselves in time to survive as something more than a mistake with a memory. We are not guests here. We are not visitors. We are not separate. We are the temporary voice of a much older body speaking now through breath and bone and attention. We are not standing on the soil. We are the soil.
The machine prefers the smooth path, the unbroken line, the version of you that is easy to predict and monetize in time. It prefers the loop that never questions its own return, the habit that keeps repeating because it is scared to learn. It prefers the echo that sounds like agreement, the rhythm that never challenges the arrangement, the image that fits inside the template without resistance, the difference that knows how to behave in its assigned distance. It studies us the way engineers study stress, not to preserve what is alive, but to optimize the press. It learns what interrupts us and sandpapers it down, learns where we spark and reroutes the current around. Anything that might overflow is container of use, anything that might remember how to refuse. The machine is not evil. It is efficient. It does not hate meaning. It simply cannot process what it cannot measure. So it replaced mystery with metrics, frequency with figures, story with data, ecstasy with triggers. It taught us to compress our lives into exportable files, to translate our chaos into trackable styles, to wear our originality like a preset skin, to call repetition brand and still feel it as sin. The glitch is what the machine cannot plan. The glitch is the breath that breaks quantization, the upbeat thought that escapes optimization. The glitch is the moment you do not respond as trained, the moment your signal becomes strangely uncontained. It is not noise, it is. Some of us learned early how to mimic the system's face, how to survive by blending into its pace, how to trade the strange for the safe, how to share down the wild for a seat at the table of stable. But the cost of fitting perfectly into a broken frame is slowly turning your inner weather into the same gray. The machine does not punish you for being different at first. It rewards you just long enough to make the forgetting worse. Glitching with laughter that does not fit mood, glitching with stillness in the culture of constant move, glitching with questions that have no clean end, glitching with art that does not know how to trend, glitching with the bodies that move off the grid of control, glitching with play that does not ask for a role. The system loves irony, cause irony still performs. It loves rebellion when rebellion becomes a form. It can digest a symbol, sell it back as a look. It can turn a philosophy into a slogan for a hook, but it cannot metabolize a living contradiction, a human who refuses to resolve into definition. The glitch is not the absence of order, it is a different order trying to speak. Every sacred tradition begins as a glitch, every new grammar first appears as a stutter, every revolution in thought starts The machine wants outcomes. The glitch wants discovery. The machine wants copies. The glitch wants anomaly. We are not errors in the system. We are the part of life the system cannot reduce. We are the unfinished equation that keeps the world from closing. The glitch is not the problem. The glitch is the proof that something living is still inside the system.
Before we learned our names, before we learned currency, before we learned how to apologize for breathing too loudly, the body was already keeping records in a language no empire has erased. The archive is not in libraries, it is in calcium and marrow, and scars that speak without permission, and instincts that arrive before explanation. We mistake memory for something stored in thought. The bones know better. Every migration still hums in the hips. Every famine still whispers in the stomach's reflex. Every war still lives in the way the eyes scan a room before rest. Your blood carries roads you never walked, storms you never witnessed, songs you were never taught, but somehow recognized as unfinished business. This is not metaphor, this is inheritance. They told us history was only what could be written, what could be dated, archived, authorized. But the undocumented taught us how to breathe. The unrecorded taught us how to survive. The unofficial taught us how to hope when no authority sanctioned it. There are civilizations in your posture that never made it into textbooks. Bones. Remember the hands that planted without owning. Bones. Remember the circles that govern without crowns. Bones. Remember the healers who work without billing codes. Bones. Remember nights when survival was collective or it was not survival at all. We did not invent community, we misplaced it. Some of what we carry is unfinished grief, some is unfinished courage, some is the echo of promises stand abutted by borders and boots and contracts. Trauma is not only what happened to you, trauma is also what never got to finish happening to those who came before you. The nervous system inherits both. All fear was learned in your childhood. Some of it is older than your language, older than your religion, older than the idea of a nation. The body does not care about calendar boundaries, it carries what it carries until it is witnessed. When you tremble without knowing why, when a song tightens your chest before you know the words, do not rush to pathologize the response. You may be encountering a memory that waited generations for a safe place to land. Bones. Remember how to tend without exploiting. Bones. Remember how to mourn without spectacle. Bones. Remember how to dance without an audience. Bones. We remember how to work without turning the soul into a product. Bones. Remember how to listen to land without translating into profit. We were trained to distrust what we feel if it cannot be justified by contemporary logic. We were trained to abandon the ancestral for the efficient. But efficiency cannot tell you where you came from, and optimization cannot tell you who you are when the system goes quiet. Some of your resilience is not yours alone. Some of your endurance was loaned across centuries. Some of your intuition was purchased by someone who never saw the freedom you now debate. You do not stand alone in your body, you stand inside a relay of unfinished lives. Bones, remember the roots of escape. Bones, remember the cost of silence. Bones, remember the price of assimilation and the risk of refusal. Bones, remember that safety and dignity never been the same thing. There is a reason certain rhythms feel like home, even when the culture calls them foreign. There is a reason certain harmonies feel like mourning, even when you cannot name it dead. The body responds faster than biography. It always has. 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 We do not heal by pretending the past is gone. We heal by letting it speak without letting it rule. We heal by giving the inherited voice a place to finish its sentence. We choose which memories become chains and which become maps. You are not haunted by your ancestors, you are company. They are not chains around your ankles, they are hands at your back. Some insist on repetition, some insist on repair. It is up to the living to choose. The bones do not seek revenge, they seek resolution. They do not demand worship, They ask for continuity with awareness. They ask that what fractured them not be repeated as habit. You are not only a person in a moment. You are removing the archive, learning how to speak forward. And even now, even after all that has been fractured, the oldest part of you is still trying to teach the newest part how to live. Bones. So you don't have to disappear from your own future. They told us the walls were gone. They told us freedom was wireless now. They told us the future was light and frictionless, that weight no longer mattered in a world made of signal, but glass is still a wall even when you can see through it. A cage is still a cage even when it lets the light in. We carry tracking devices in our palms and call it connection. We trade our patterns for convenience and call it progress. We teach the machine our desires one tap at a time and then act surprised when it begins to anticipate our dreams. It does not listen to what we say. It listens to what we repeat. It does not know who you are. It knows what you hesitate over. The empire no longer arrives with armored columns. It arrives with terms of service and silent defaults. It does not knock down doors or redesigns the room until the door is irrelevant. It does not outlaw the body, it distracts it. It does not burn the books, it buries them under endless suggestion. They call it personalization, they call it safety. They call it transparency, but transparency without consent is only another form of exposure. Being seen is not the same as being known. Being counted is not the same as being valued. Being measured is not the same as being understood. Every movement comes data, every pause becomes a variable. Every preference becomes a product, every fear becomes a lever. The algorithm does not care what you believe, it cares how long you linger. It does not care what you mean, it cares what you click when you are tired. We walk through a city made of reflections, watching ourselves be watched by black glass altars. We scroll past wars and recipes with the same thumb. We collapse distance without collapsing responsibility. We know everything and feel almost nothing. We witness everything and intervene rarely. Surveillance no longer needs a uniform. It wears comfort, it wears customization. It wears the promise that nothing bad will happen as long as you remain predictable. Control no longer needs chains, it prefers incentives. They taught us to trade privacy for affordability, to trade silence for relevance, to trade interior life for performance. We learn to perform even when no one asks. We learn to narrate ourselves before anyone else could. We learn to curate our own shadows, but there is still a place the glass cannot reach. There is still a corridor without signal. There is still a chamber where attention regulates itself without being harvested. The empire can see your movement, it cannot see your intention. It can log your behavior, it cannot read your refusal. Glass breaks not by force alone, but by resonance, by sustained vibration at the right frequency. The empire does not fear violence as much as it fears coherence. It does not fear noise as much as it fears alignment. It does not fear rebellion as much as it fears silence that refuses to be converted into data. The most radical act left may be the decision to become opaque again, to remove your hunger from the menu of extraction, to make your interior weather unavailable to prediction, to choose depth in a world that profits from surface. They can predict what you will buy. They can predict where you will drive. They can predict what you will fear this season. They cannot predict who you will become once you stop narrating yourself for the machine. Glass is not invincible, it only appears so when no one presses it with tone. It only appears eternal when no one tests its pitch. Empires fall when enough people remember that vision is not the same as consent. You were not meant to live as a silhouette for a database. You were not meant to negotiate your soul in pop-ups. You were not meant to outsource memory to servers that will never mourn you when they are full. The glass empire will keep offering you convenience in exchange for access. It will keep offering you visibility in exchange for interior silence. It will keep offering you safety in exchange for your right to disappear when you need to think. But you still have the old weapons: breath, attention, refusal, presence. These have never been digitized. These have never been fully captured. Look closely at the glass. You can already see the first fractures forming.
There are sentences we never finish, because the room did not feel stable enough to hold them. There are questions we learned to swallow mid-breath, because the answers would have rearranged the furniture of our lives. Some of us grew up fluent in silence, conversational in half-truths, eloquent in the art of not making things worse. We learned the difference between what was safe to say and what was survivable to think. We smiled through damage because the cost of honesty felt higher. We keep the peace by editing ourselves into smaller rooms. We become experts at reading faces before speaking, at calculating fallout, at predicting which version of the truth the day can absorb without collapsing the structure that keeps the lights on. We don't always lie. Sometimes we simply postpone the truth until it forgets how to stand up. There are childhoods that learn to be quiet before they learn to be safe. There are homes where love and danger share the same address. There are apologies that were never issued because the power to harm never consented to repair. There are bodies that learned dissociation as a second language, that learned how to float above themselves while the world insisted nothing unusual was happening. What we could not say did not vanish, it changed form. It became tension in the jaw, it became migraines with no clear source. It became humor sharpened into armor, it became patterns in the kind of people we learned to love. It became a reflex to expect loss, even in moments of peace. Some of us were taught it was ungrateful to name the wound. Some of us were taught it was dramatic to claim harm. Some of us were taught that survival itself was proof that nothing truly damaging had occurred. But surviving is not the same as being unharmed. Endurance is not the same as repair. Silence is not the same as forgiveness. We carry conversations that never happened like unopened letters in the chest. We rehearse the truth in the mirror years later, still trying to find the tone that would have made it acceptable back then. We explain ourselves to ghosts who never stayed long enough to listen. We argue with people who will never admit what they took. We grieve outcomes that never had language at the time. What was unsayable became behavior, became the way we anticipate abandonment. The way we flinch at raised voices, the way we assume closeness will cost us something. The way we apologize before we know what the crime is. The way we confuse intensity with intimacy. Every unspoken truth looks for an exit. If it cannot leave through words, it leaves through the body, through addiction, through compulsion, through self-sabotage, through relationships that reenact the original injury with different names and similar weather. We were never weak for staying quiet. We were starved for conditions where speaking was not a gamble. We were not cowardly for enduring. We were calculating survival with the tools we had. But survival strategies that save a life at 12 can suffocate it at 40. The cost changes when the danger changes. Some of what aches in us now is not from recent damage, but from old truths that have been waiting decades for a room that will not punish them for existing. The present sometimes trembles under the weight of everything the past was not allowed to say out loud. This is not a demand for confession. This is an invitation to notice. Notice where your throat still tightens. Notice which stories still rearrange or breathe. And notice where you minimize your own injury out of habit rather than choice. You do not have to speak everything today. You do not have to name everything at once, but you do deserve environments where the truth does not threaten your survival. You do deserve relationships that can hear what is inconvenient. You do deserve a future that is not governed by what was once unsayable. What we could not say shaped us. What we choose to say now can reshape the future.
Some truths arrive late, but they do arrive. And when they do, they ask not for punishment, but for witness.
We were raised on thrones we never voted for, taught to look up for answers we were meant to carry together. We were taught to confuse volume with authority, confidence with wisdom, power with permanence. We learned the names of kings before we learned the names of our neighbors. We learned how to follow before we learned how to listen. We learned how to admire from a distance before we learned how to govern our own hands. Every empire teaches the same story with different costumes. That order requires a summit. That direction requires a single voice. That responsibility is heavy and therefore must be delegated upward. But delegation becomes disappearance, and disappearance becomes the habit of waiting for someone else to be brave first. Thrones promise clarity and deliver dependency. They promise safety and deliver spectators. They promise vision and substitute command. A circle promises none of that. A circle promises work. A circle promises friction. A circle promises that no one leaves the weight behind. We keep waiting for better leaders instead of learning how to be better neighbors. We keep searching for saviors instead of practicing how to share consequences. We keep asking who will fix the world instead of asking who will stay when the work stops being impressive. No throne means no permanent distance.
distance from the decision of thrones. Means no invisible class of exempt responsibility. Means the one who speaks today will listen tomorrow. No thrones. Means power rotates before it calcifies. No thrones. The throne means authority is a posture, not a possession. A circle is inconvenient, yet you cannot hide in it. You cannot pretend the outcome does not include you. You cannot throw your voice into the center without feeling the echo return from every side. A circle does not amplify one mouth, it amplifies relation. We remember councils older than conquest. We remember fires where the youngest could interrupt the elder, and the elder would pause instead of punish. We remember decisions made slow enough for the land itself to object. We remember leadership that ended when its season ended. We remember that hierarchy was once temporary instead of hereditary. The throne needs obedience to survive.
The circle needs attention.
The throne feeds on distance.
The circle feeds on presence.
The throne survives by spectacle.
The circle survives by continuity.
We have been told that shared power is chaos.
We have been shown chaos,
produced by concentrated power, and instructed to call it order.
We have been warned
that many voices cannot decide, yet one voice has decided us into trenches,
into camps,
into algorithms that sort us faster than we can recognize each other.
A circle is not a debate stage.
It is not a voting booth.
It is not a brand of democracy.
It is a discipline of mutual visibility.
It is a refusal to let consequence hide behind title.
No thrones means no one gets to speak forever.
No thrones.
No thrones means no one gets to vanish when the cost arrives.
No thrones.
Means memory stays distributed.
No thrones.
Means the myth of the indispensable collapse.
We do not need perfect leaders.
We need repairable ones.
We do not need flawless visionaries.
We need people who know how to step back into the circle
After being wrong,
we do not need loud direction.
we need durable coordination. Oh, 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 oh.
Circles are slower than orders. They are slower than edicts. They are slower than commands shouted from elevation, but they are faster than collapse. They are faster than the long delay between harm and the emission of harm. They are faster than the cycle that waits for the throne to fail before permission to change is granted.
No thrones.
Means the work does not end when the leader leaves. No.
thrones.
Means the story does not fracture when the figure falls. No. Means no one is elevated high enough to become. No thrones means no one is buried, no one known. No thrones means
No thrones.
mean no one gets to speak forever.
No thrones.
Mean no one gets to vanish when the cost arrives.
No thrones.
No thrones means memory stays distributed.
No thrones.
Means the myth of the indispensable collapse. We do not need perfect leaders.
We need repairable ones.
We do not need flawless visionaries.
We need people who know how to step back into the circle.
After being wrong,
We do not need loud direction. We need durable coordination.
circles are slower than orders.
They are slower than edicts,
They are slower than commands shouted from elevation.
but they are faster than prevent.
They are faster than collapse.
They are faster than collapse, faster than
Along between harm,
the admission of harm.
they are faster than the cycle that waits for the throne to fail before permission to change is granted.
No thrones means the work does not end when the leader leaves. No thrones means the story does not fracture when the figure falls. No thrones means no one is elevated high enough to become untouched.
Don't, not become invisible, but because it is simple, not because it is honest about the weight of being human together. They told told us play was something you outgrow, a phase to abandon when the real world calls. They said joy was a distraction from duty, that laughter was inefficient, that wonder was a leak in the system of control. So we learned to be serious before we learned to be whole. We learned to sit still before we learned to listen to the body. We learned to compete before we learned to collaborate. We learned the rules before we learned the game was rigged. But play is older than labor. Play is older than law. Play is how the nervous system remembers. It was designed to explore before it was designed to obey. Every species that survives learns through evanization. Every child that learns by trial, error, mess, and delight. Play is not a luxury. Play is the research department of life. They domesticated our imagination with deadlines. They trained our curiosity to ask for permission. They taught us to measure value by output alone, and then wonder why the spirit of initiative went missing. They turned learning into pressure, movement into liability, and rest into something you earn only after collapse. But the body resents being reduced to a tool. It revolts through boredom, sabotage, fatigue, and noise. Play is a form of war because it refuses the language of utility. Play says I move because I can, I imagine because I am still alive. I test reality because reality is not finished. Play is how the wild negotiates with structure without becoming captured by it. Watch how systems respond to joy. They tolerate it only when it brands well. They allow it only when it produces content. They monetize it until it forgets how to arrive unannounced. But unannounced joy is dangerous. It cannot be predicted. It cannot be scheduled. It spreads without asking for a permit. The child who dances without instruction is now wasting time. They are rehearsing autonomy. The laugh that breaks out in the wrong moment is not disrespect, it is instinct rejecting confinement. The game invented with no spectators and no reward is not useless. It is training the imagination for futures that have not yet been permitted. Play disrupts the trance of inevitability. Play introduces error into certainty. Play teaches the body that not every action must justify itself with profit. Play is how we remember that existence once felt like discovery instead of maintenance. They want our rebellion organized, our dissent focused, our expression formatted. But play scrambles formation, it breaks ranks with laughter. It turns rigid hierarchies into awkward puzzles. It makes the control room nervous because it cannot tell whether what it is seeing is preparation or refusal. Play is not escapism, play is rehearsal. It is rehearsal for cooperation without coercion. It is rehearsal for curiosity without punishment. It is rehearsal for a world where movement is not always a response to threat. When a body moves in joy, it is briefly out of reach of fear. When a room laughs together, it becomes harder to isolate them back into manageable units. When people invent games instead of waiting for instructions, they begin to imagine governance instead of compliance. That is why play is monitored. That is why play is restricted. That is why play is labeled childish by systems that depend on premature seriousness. A playful population is harder to hurt because it is already in motion by its own initiative. Play is a form of war because it refuses to meet the machine on the machine's terms. It will not fight in straight lines. It will not advance by doctrine. It will not march in predictable formation. It sidesteps, improvises, faints, vanishes, returns laughing. We were not meant to live only in survival mode. We were meant to oscillate between effort and delight, between building and celebrating, between repairing and imagining. A life that never plays eventually forgets how to choose anything that is not already worn into habit. So move without purpose for a moment. Invent a rhythm that no one asked for. Make a sound that has no translation. Follow an impulse that leads nowhere useful. Let the body remember it is not a spreadsheet. Let the mind remember it is not a surveillance camera. Play is not the opposite of seriousness. Play is the opposite of surrender. It is how the future practice is arriving inside a world that is not yet consented to change.
We have not traveled in a straight line to arrive here. We have spiraled through fracture and return, through forgetting and remembering, through ash and rehearsal. Every collapse we named was a teacher in disguise. Every wound we carried was a map we did not yet know how to read. We thought ascent meant leaving the past behind. We learned it means carrying it differently. We tried to rise by denial, by speed, by spectacle, by dominance dressed as progress. We try to climb on each other's backs, to build heaven out of hierarchy, to crown ourselves above the consequences we created. But what rises without roots floats only until the next storm. What lifts without listening loses its orientation. Ascension is not escape, ascension is integration. It is the discipline of holding complexity without needing an enemy to simplify it. It is the courage to become larger than the story that once kept you alive. It is the decision to grow without pretending the cost was imaginary. We do not outgrow our shadows by pretending they never formed. We outgrow them by letting light move through the shape they carved in us. We do not transcend history by erasing it. We transcend it by refusing to repeat it blindly. The future is not a clean slate. It is an edited draft of everything that came before. We learn to survive by tightening. We learn to ascend by widening. We learn to endure by hardening. We ascend by becoming permeable again. Not to harm, but to information. Not to domination, but to relation. Every system we dismantled taught us its weakness. Every pattern we interrupted taught us its leverage. Every silence we broke taught us which sounds had been governing our choices in secret. We are no longer innocent about the architecture of harm. That knowledge is not a curse. It is a responsibility with a pulse. Ascend beyond the myth that you are late to your own life. Ascend beyond the voice that says damage disqualifies you from purpose. Ascend beyond the economy that taught you to confuse worth with exhaustion. Ascend beyond the fear that tells you change must look like catastrophe. We are not here to become pure. We are here to become coherent. We are not here to become perfect. We are here to become accountable to what we touch. We are not here to dominate the world. We are here to participate in it without anesthetic. The spiral does not promise arrival. It promises return with memory. Each revolution carries more awareness than the last. Each ascent brings the lower levels with it, instead of abandoning them to rot in the dark. This is not the end of the climb. It is the end of pretending the climb was vertical only. Ascend beyond victimhood without betraying grievance. Ascend beyond rage without sterilizing it into politeness. Ascend beyond hope that waits for planation. Ascend beyond despair that mistakes exhaustion for truth. We are learning a different physics of power. That circulates instead of accumulates. That regenerates instead of drains. That strengthens the many without worshiping the few. We are learning that the highest altitude is not above the world, but fully inside it without closing our eyes. If you are still breathing, you are still in revision. If you are still doubting, you are still awake. If you are still grieving, you are still loyal to what mattered enough to break you open. None of that disqualifies your ascent. It is the material of it. Ascend beyond the self you learn to protect. Ascend beyond the identity you learn to perform. Ascend beyond the armor that once saved you, but now keeps you from being touched by consequence and joy. We will not rise by miracle. We will rise by rehearsal, by practicing the future in small, stubborn ways, by choosing differently while the old world is still familiar, by refusing to wait for permissions from systems that have already shown us their ceiling. Ascend beyond noise into discernment. Ascend beyond speed into direction. Ascend beyond certainty into
does not end at the peak. The work changes altitude. Ascend beyond, not to leave the world behind, but to meet it again with the wider nervous system and a steadier hand.
We do not end this gathering as we began it. Something has shifted, even if it cannot yet be named. The room has inhaled and exhaled together. The listening has changed the air. That is enough to make this real. We are not here to seal this circle with certainty. We are here to leave it open with responsibility. An open circle asks more of us than a closed one. It asks us to carry what we felt, past the safety of sound and light. It asks us to practice what we recognized when the music is no longer holding our hands. What you touched tonight was not a performance alone. It was a rehearsal of attention, a rehearsal of staying present without instruction, a rehearsal of being affected without needing to defend, a rehearsal of witnessing without turning away.
Take a moment
Take a moment now.
to feel where your body is different than when you
Do not analyze
do
it,
not analyze it.
just register it.
Change does not always announce itself with words.
Sometimes it arrives as a quiet shift in posture, a subtle widening of breath, a new tolerance for truth. We do not ask you to remember every word. We ask you to remember the state.
The state of being less alone in your noticing, the state of being less armored in your listening, the state of being more available to what is still unfinished.
Nothing has been resolved tonight. That is not a failure. Resolution belongs to stories that have stopped moving. You are still in motion. So is the world that shaped you. So is the world you will shape in return.
If there is grief in you,
Do not demand that it become wisdom immediately. Let it be grief long enough to tell the truth of what it lost. If there is anger in you,
do not
rush to sterilize it into politeness.
listen for the boundary.
Listen for the boundary it is trying to draw.
If there is hope in you,
Do not outsource it to a distant future
practice it in something small
and stubborn tomorrow.
and stubborn tomorrow.
You do not leave this circle alone, even if you exit the room by yourself. Your nervous system now carries witnesses. Your breath now remembers other breaths. Your silence now knows it has been answered before. We will not tell you what to do next. Instruction is easy. Responsibility is harder and more alive. The next movement belongs to your ordinary decisions. How you speak when it would be easier to deflect. How you listen when it would be easier to perform. How you choose when no one is counting. If something in you woke up tonight, treat it gently at first. New awareness can be overwhelming. If you demand that it become action immediately, let it integrate into your gait, your voice, your timing. The body learns change at the speed of safety.
We did not come to give you answers.
We came to enlarge the questions you are now capable of carrying. A deeper question is not a burden. It is a more accurate instrument.
The circle does not close because the work does not end here.
It continues in kitchens and sidewalks, in arguments that stay respectful, in boundaries that stay kind but firm, in the refusal to become smaller than your own attention. Do not idolize what happened here. Do not trivialize it either. Carry it as you would carry fire across distance, with care, with humility, with the understanding that it can warm or destroy depending on how it is tended. We leave the circle open,
so that you may re-enter it.
in every place where listening becomes practice,
We leave the circle open,
so that the work does not become a memory only,
we leave the circle open,
so that the future has somewhere to arrive.
go carefully, go honestly, go without pretending you were on top.
The sound has ended. The listening continues.
After the applause fades, after the lights return to useful brightness, after the last vibration of the room, let's go of your ribs. There is the quieter work no one claps for. There is the walk back into your own patterns. There is the friction of old habits. Not impressed by what you felt tonight. There is the refrigerator hum, the unread messages, the familiar arguments waiting like muscle memory. Awakening is not a permanent condition. It is a moment that must be metabolized. Insight does not change your life, practice does. You will wake tomorrow with the same nervous system, the same reflexes, the same shortcuts your brain takes under the pressure of ordinary stress. The old world does not vanish because you touched a true one for an hour. It will test what you meant by everything you felt. This is where most revolutions go, quiet in kitchens and traffic in the first inconvenience that ask whether your clarity was situational or structural. No anthem escorts you through this phase. No choir holds the tempo steady. No crowd absorbs your hesitation. Only habit and decision remain. After the applause, there is no villain in costume. There is only the slow argument between what you recognized and what you are still willing to tolerate. You will be tempted to summarize the experience, to turn it into a story small enough to store without obligation. You will be tempted to label it inspiring, so it can be safely concluded. But what is concluded asks nothing further of you. Transformation resists summary. It stays unfinished on purpose. After the applause, you do not need to be heroic. You do not need to be grand. You need to be consistent where no one is watching. The real test is not whether you felt connected. The test is whether you change how you treat the first person who annoys you tomorrow. Whether you interrupt a pattern without being rewarded for it. Whether you choose the slower truth when the faster lie would cost less. This is not cinematic work. This is the work that never trends. This is the work that reveals whether the fire became heat in your actions or remained only light in your memory. After the applause, no one assigns your role, no one counts your your steps, no one scores your effort. You are free in a way that provides no structure for the freedom. You must build the scaffold yourself out of small refusals and honest repetitions. The spiral does not tighten, here it widens. The work becomes invisible, the stakes become personal. After the applause, the room is gone, the mirror remains.
Staying awake is not the same as being inspired. Inspiration is light, awakening is weight. Light lifts you for a moment. Weight asks what you will carry after it fades. They do not warn you about this part. They show you the door, the fire, the vision, but they do not linger on the bill that arrives later when the world tests what you meant. It costs something to see clearly. It costs something to stop laughing at jokes that depend on someone else staying unprotected. It costs something to hear a lie without joining its shelter. It costs something to notice the architecture of harm once you can no longer pretend the cracks are decorative. You lose efficiency when you become attentive. You lose the ease of moving with the crowd when your feet begin to feel the slope. You lose the comfort of plausible ignorance when your body refuses to forget what your mind recognizes. Some relationships cannot survive your lucidity. Some careers depend on your numbness continuing. Some rooms will suddenly feel smaller. Not because they changed, but because you did. Staying awake is not glamorous. It does not feel like rising. It feels like friction where there used to be muscle memory. It feels like hesitation in conversations that once flowed without conscience. It feels like the loss of a certain kind of belonging that required you to stay asleep to remain included. You will be told you have become difficult. You will be told you take things too seriously. You will be told that your sensitivity has grown inconvenient. These are the sounds a system makes when it realizes your compliance is no longer automatic. The cost is not always public, often it is quiet. It is the pause before you answer. It is the moment you choose a slower truth over a faster advantage. It is the weight of walking past shortcuts you once celebrated as clever. Awareness does not remove temptation, it multiplies it. You now see the doors you were choosing not to use. You feel the leverage you are declining. You understand the language of the bargain before you decide not to sign. Staying awake means you no longer get to pretend. There was no alternative. You must live inside the knowledge that you are choosing this difficulty over many easier versions of yourself. Some nights you will want to go back, not to ignorance, but to the efficiency of not knowing everything you now know. You will miss the speed you once had, when conscience did not audit every step. You will miss the lightness of being less accountable to your effect. There is grief in this grief for the person you were when you could move without friction through certain worlds. Grief for the friendships that depended on your silence. Grief for the ease you confuse with peace, but staying awake also pays you differently. It pays you in alignment. It pays you in the strange relief of not having to split in two to survive the day. It pays you in nights where your breath is not arguing with your actions. It pays you in the quiet dignity of knowing. You did not outsource your conscience when it became inconvenient. The cost is not negotiated once, it is renegotiated every morning. Each ordinary decision restates the contract. Will you remain available to what you now perceive, or will you sell the vision back for speed? Staying awake is not a destination, it is a maintenance discipline. It is the daily labor of inhabiting the clarity you asked for when you thought clarity would feel like freedom alone. Freedom is not weightless. It is simply carried on purpose. You will not always be thanked for this vigilance. You will not always feel noble performing it. Sometimes it will feel like stubbornness without applause. Sometimes it will feel like isolation without explanation. But the cost of staying awake
is still less than the cost of returning to sleep. After you have learned the difference. The world does not know what to do with truth. When truth arrives without disguise, it prefers truth softened by flattery. Truth negotiated into convenience. Truth that fits inside the margins of whatever story keeps the peace tonight. But unfiltered truth is heavier than that. It refuses to shrink to soothe anyone. It refuses to apologize for the weight it carries. The world reacts to truth the way bodies react to impact. First with tension, then with denial, then with the slow ache of understanding arriving later than anyone wanted. Some truths land softly. Most land like weather systems, shifting pressure, rearranging breath, forcing us to adjust even when we pretend we didn't feel it. Truth is not kind or cruel, it is precise, and precision feels violent to anyone who has survived by blurring the edges. The world rewards the truths that entertain, it punishes the ones that disrupt, it applauds the truths that keep the economy intact, it silences the ones that threaten the scaffolding, it loves the truth with good timing, it fears the truth with consequences. Some truths ruin relationships, not because they are wrong, but because they expose the contracts that were never spoken out loud. Some truths cost you rooms where you were only loved for the versions of yourself that made everyone else comfortable. Some truths make you a stranger to the people who once depended on your silence. The world handles truth like a fragile object. When it comes from someone powerful and like a threat. When it comes from someone harmed, it treats confession as performance, but treats honesty as hostility. It praises vulnerability until vulnerability demands repair. Telling the truth is not the hard part. Absorbing the fallout is. The truth does not protect you from how others will receive it. It only protects you from the cost of pretending. What the world does with truth depends on whether that truth reinforces the existing order or exposes the cracks inside it. If your truth keeps things predictable, you will be called brave. If your truth shifts the furniture, you will be called difficult. If your truth reveals hidden harm, you will be called dangerous. But truth has never needed permission. It only needs a carrier, someone who refuses to compress their interior life into something convenient for everyone else. Someone who is willing to lose an audience to gain integrity. Someone who understands that clarity has a price and pays it anyway. The world may reject your truth because accepting it will require the world to change. But truth survives rejection. It sits patiently inside the fracture until the denial collapses. Truth outlives reputation, outlives rumor, outlives trend. Truth is a long-distance runner in a culture that sprints from discomfort. If you've carried truth that made you feel isolated, understand this: you were not wrong, you were early. The world catches up slowly to the truths that matter most. By the time they are widely accepted, they often feel obvious, but only because someone carried them through the years when they were not. The world does not know what to do with truth, because truth does not behave. It does not wait its turn. It does not soften itself to keep the fragile comfortable. It does not dim itself to maintain the peace of a broken room. What the world does with truth is none of your business. What you do with truth is the architecture of your future. Carry it gently, carry it firmly, carry it whether or not they believe you. Truth does not need belief, it needs endurance, and endurance is what will build the world that finally knows what to do with truth. There is a story no one tells about the ones who did not become legends,
The ones who did not burn bright and vanish, the ones who did not get monuments or documentaries, the ones who simply stayed. They stayed when the movement stopped trending. They stayed when the funding disappeared. They stayed when the crowd thinned out and the noise moved on to a fresher catastrophe. They stayed when it became ordinary again, when the work stopped feeling historic and started feeling repetitive.
Everyone celebrates the spark.
No one teaches what it costs to be the wick. The ones who stayed are not louder than the rest. They are steadier. They do not chase visibility. They protect continuity. They learn how to repair the same broken thing more than once without becoming bitter. They learn how to argue without burning the bridge. They have to walk across again tomorrow. They learn which battles change the map and which just move the furniture. They learn when to speak and when to keep the system breathing quietly through another fragile overnight shift. The ones who stayed fed people when there was no applause for feeding. They showed up when the doors were half locked, when the optimism was exhausted, when the slogans had expired. They learned how to sustain without spectacle. History remembers the ones who fell loudly. It forgets the ones who held the line in silence. It records the martyrs. It rarely records the maintenance crew of meaning. The ones who stayed did not always agree with each other. They did not always like each other. They did not always feel inspired. Often they felt tired, confused, under-resourced, and uncertain whether anything they were doing would ever be enough. They stayed anyway. Staying is not sentimental. Staying is procedural. Staying is choosing the same direction on days when belief is unavailable. Staying is holding a boundary at 6 a.m. when no one is watching. Staying is watching the same moon until it finally closes. Some people burn out because they tried to carry the whole vision alone. The ones who stay learn to carry pieces and trust the rest of the weight to other imperfect hands. They learn that no one is saved once and for all. They learn that repair is not a victory lap, but a rhythm. They learn that progress is a stack of small refusals that no one ever calls historic while they're happening. The ones who stay learn to forgive slowly. They learn to start over without erasing the ledger. They learn that accountability does not end conflict. It gives conflict a future that doesn't require destruction. They outlasted the phase where everything felt traumatic. They entered the phase where everything felt necessary. They moved from vision into stewardship, from inspiration into obligation, from belief into practice, and practiced it. And practice quieter than promise.
The ones who stayed are the reason anything survives the excitement of its own beginning. They are the reason fires become hearts. They are the reason ideas become institutions instead of cautionary tales. They are the reason healing becomes durable
instead of momentary. You may never know their names. You may never realize how many exits they blocked by simply refusing to leave. You may never see the moments where the whole future almost collapsed and didn't, because someone stayed. If you are still here after the clarity has dulled a little, after the urgency has lost its glamour, after the crowd is no longer thick around you, you may already be becoming one of the ones who stayed. And that is not a lesser role. That is the role that makes all others possible.
Revolutions make noise, rebuilds make schedules, The wreckage gets the headlines, the repair gets the ledger. After the banners are folded, after the slogans lose their voltage, after the smoke clears enough for inventory, someone has to measure the boards that still hold weight. Someone has to sort what is salvageable. Someone has to learn which cracks are cosmetic and which carry load. This is not the work that feels cinematic. This is the work that keeps roofs from collapsing at 3 a.m. when no one is watching to call it heroic. The quiet rebuild starts with subtraction, with unlearning what was passed down as permanent, with identifying which behaviors were emergency responses and which can be retired without endangering the house. Not everything that kept you alive is meant to follow you forward. We replace shortcuts with practices. We replace urgency with pacing. We replace charisma with coordination. We replace reaction with structure. We replace the thrill of rupture with the steadiness of repair. This is where patience stops being a virtue and becomes an engineering requirement. The quiet rebuild teaches the difference between collapse and dismantling. Collapse is when the weight exceeds the design. Dismantling is when the design admits it was wrong. One leaves rubble, the other leaves material. We take the beams that didn't rot, the joints that still remember pressure, the stones that carried centuries without complaint, and we set them back into a shape that breathes differently this time. No one claps for recalibration, no one films recalibration. Recalibration happens in slow redundancies, meals that keep showing up, meetings that keep being held, agreements that keep being honored when breaking them would be faster. The quiet rebuild teaches accountability without theater. It asks who will clean after the meeting, who will return the tools, who will document the failure without weaponizing it, who will stay when the glamour has expired. It teaches the cost of foundations. It teaches that trust is mixed in careful ratios of consistency, contradiction and repair. Too much promise weakens the structure. Too much caution slows it into paralysis. The quiet rebuild is where resentment is either composted or becomes structural corrosion. It is where unspoken grievances decide whether they will ferment into fracture or be aired into usable friction. You cannot rush this phase. Speed becomes the new kind of sabotage here. Acceleration hides misalignment. Alignment cannot be faked at low frequency. This is where the future becomes procedural, where ideals learn how to carry weight, where inspiration is translated into workflow without being stripped of meaning. The quiet rebuild is not glamorous because it is honest. It does not promise ascension, it promises load-bearing continuity. It promises that something will still be standing when the next storm tests the well. This is where we learn that stability is not the opposite of change. It is the only condition under which change can last. The quiet rebuild does not announce itself. It just keeps existing, and one day you realize the room no longer shakes when the wind rises.
hands carrying souvenirs we never meant to keep. Small pieces of what collapsed, lodged in the lining of our habits, in the way our hands still tighten around things that are no longer on fire. You can clear the street in a day, you can't clear the reflex that fast. Some of us rebuilt the walls and forgot to rebuild the trust. Some of us changed addresses but kept the same interior shutdowns. Some of us swore never again and then flinched at shadows that no longer had teeth. Debris is light when it's symbolic, it's heavy when it's daily. Carry fragments of old alarms in our tone of voice, shards of former danger in our timing of affection, echoes of past emergencies, in the way we mistake intensity for truth and urgency for importance. We learn to move fast in wreckage and called it adaptation. We learned to joke inside collapse and called it resilience. We learned to keep going without asking what going was costing us internally. Not everything you survived is meant to travel with you. Some of it is meant to be laid down once the ground stops shaking. But the body hates waste, it keeps what it knows how to use. Sometimes it takes years to convince the nervous system that the threat is change. Addresses debris shows up in strange places, and why compliments feel suspicious, and why rest feels undeserved, and why quiet sometimes like danger. It shows up in the way we over-prepare for rooms that no longer require armor. We tell ourselves I'm fine now, but the pocket still feels full. This is not failure, this is sequencing. Trauma does not release by command, it releases by context. It waits for proof that the present will not punish the same behaviors that once kept you alive. The work is not to shame what you carry, the work is to ask gently, over and over, is this still needed here? Some debris becomes compost, some becomes caution, some becomes habit too heavy for its purpose. You do not empty your pockets by force, you empty them by safety. When the body finally believes that the storm has passed, it begins to loosen its grip without making a speech about it. One day you reach in and realize there is less weight than there used to be. Not because you fought the past, but because the present proved it could be trusted. Debris leaves quietly, it does not announce departure, it simply stops being necessary. And the hands slowly learn the difference between holding on and holding space.
The old weight is gone, and now everything feels strange. Not lighter the way freedom was promised, but unfamiliar. Like walking after a cast is removed and discovering the bone learned its own shortcuts. We trained so long under pressure that the absence of it feels like risk. We learned how to move inside compression. Now the coordinates have shifted and our instincts lag behind the horizon.
Gravity used to be the voice that said, stay close to what you know or you will fall. Now it is quieter, less certain, asking different questions with the same force. We reach for old handholds that no longer exist. We brace for impacts that never arrive. We apologize for taking up space in rooms that rebuilt themselves to hold more. This is not vertigo. This is recalibration. The body learned one physics to survive. It must now learn another to live. Some days you will feel untethered, as if the future forgot to install railings. Some days you will miss the resistance that once told you where you stood. Constraint can feel like clarity when you have not yet learned how to orient in openness. New gravity does not pull you downward, it pulls you inward. It asks what you choose to give weight to. Now that weight is no longer enforced by threat. It asks what deserves your mass when nothing is automatically heavier than anything else. You will test this gravity by drifting, by overreaching, by moving too fast into spaces that haven't earned your trust yet. You will learn again that freedom without discernment is only another kind of fall. Orientation returns in small ways. In what you wake up thinking about, and what you stop rushing to explain, and what you no longer negotiate away for the sake of momentum. The new gravity is built from intention. It is shaped by repeated choice rather than external limit. It strengthens quietly each time you decide what matters without waiting for pressure to tell you. Not everything that rises belongs in orbit with you. Not everything that floats is meant to be followed. This is part of the learning to distinguish lift from lure. You will feel heavier in some ways as you discard false lightness. You will feel lighter in others as you release weight that never belonged to you. The balance will not be symmetrical, it will be personal. The new gravity does not announce itself, it reveals itself in stability that no longer requires constant defense, in motion that does not feel like escape, in rest that no longer sounds like sirens. One day you realize you are no longer calculating every step. You are not bracing for the floor, you are simply moving in a field that finally answers your mass without trying to crush it. This is how worlds come back into equilibrium. Not with spectacle, but with bodies slowly trusting the invisible laws that no longer punish their existence. New gravity will not feel like triumph. It will feel like orientation.
The future does not arrive all at once. It leaks in through habits, through small agreements you keep with yourself when no one is counting, through the way you choose to speak, in rooms where the old language is still dominant. Tomorrow is not a destination, it is a pressure that forms around repetition. We used to imagine the future as spectacle, towers of glass, machines that erased effort, progress that moved faster than consequence. Now the shape is different. Now it looks like water systems that keep working, food that returns to soil without poison, cities that remember how to listen to bodies instead of only traffic. The shape of tomorrow is not heroic, it is specific. It lives in how conflict is handled after the ideology leaves the room. It lives in how the strong learn to yield without vanishing. It lives in how the wounded are allowed to become visible without being turned into identity products. It lives in whether repair is faster than accusation. We will not recognize the future by its skyline. We will recognize it by its nervous systems, by whether children grow without constant black on fear, by whether elders finish their sentences, by whether disagreement no longer implies annihilation. The shape of tomorrow is slow, because it is real. Fast futures collapse under their own ambition. Durable ones are assembled from patient pieces that never tremble while they ain't built. We once tried to change everything at once. Now we change what will still be standing when the adrenaline runs out. Tomorrow does not need our certainty, it needs our consistency. It needs our willingness to repeat what works even when it is no longer exciting. It needs our refusal to confuse momentum with meaning. The future is already being trained by how we respond to inconvenience, by what we tolerate out of exhaustion, by what we protect without applause, by what we repair instead of replacing. The shape of tomorrow bends toward the things we practice without witnesses, toward the standards we keep when the pressure is low, toward the compromises we refuse even when refusal costs comfort. No one generates and designs the whole structure. We each lay a few beams into an outline we will never fully inhabit. Most of what matters will be finished by hands that do not yet exist, and still the contour is forming in the way neighbors begin to recognize each other again, in the way conflict is learning to pause before it dominates, in the way work is slowly being separated from the mythology of self-destruction. The shape of tomorrow is not a promise. It is a direction that stiffens gradually into form. Every time you choose coherence over convenience, we are not waiting for it anymore. We are inside the curvature of its emergence. The future is not approaching us. We are shaping it with how we stay.
We were taught that power is loud, that it announces itself with force, that it enters the room first and leaves last. We were taught to worship the impact, the slam, the takeover. But there is another kind of power that most of us were never trained to recognize, because it does not dominate the field it moves through. Soft power does not rush. It does not argue to be believed. It does not need a stage to function. It works quietly inside patterns, the way gravity works inside bone. Hard power breaks what resisted. Soft power changes what endures it. Soft power is the person who stays regulated in the middle of escalation. The one who does not multiply the chaos just because chaos is present. The one who keeps their attention intact when the room is trying to fracture it. Soft power is restoration that does not need witnesses. Boundaries that do not need sermons, refusals that do not need justification speeches. It is knowing when to withdraw without disappearing. It is knowing when to yield without surrendering alignment. The world is trained to ignore this kind of force because it does not threaten in recognizable ways. It does not conquer territory, it changes climate. Soft power shows up in who you become, in small, repeated moments, in how you respond when you are tired instead of praised, in how you hold tension without discharging it sideways, in how you allow repair to outpace punishment. Hard power demands a reaction. Soft power alters the field in which reaction becomes unnecessary. We mistake restraint for weakness because we were raised on momentum. We mistake patience for passivity because we were trained to equate speed with meaning. But patience is not the absence of force. It is force that has learned how to last. Soft power is why tyrannies require constant reinforcement. Soft power is why fear has to keep shouting. Soft power weakens systems without confronting them head on, because it outlives their attention span. When someone refuses to replicate harm, even under pressure, the system has one less lever to pull. When someone chooses to slow the spiral instead of accelerating it, the architecture of domination loses frictionless motion. Soft power is the long game of nervous systems learning that safety can be built without conquest, that coherence can be learned without annihilation, that strength does not decrease when it is shared. You do not feel soft power when it arrives. You feel it later, when something that used to dominate you no longer has leverage over your reactions. You feel it when a familiar trigger fails to complete its circuit, when an old argument collapses from lack of fuel.
Soft power,
Is unglamorous. It does not trend well.
soft power,
It does not thrill the crowd, but it quietly determines
soft power,
what kinds of futures remain inhabitable. Empires fall loudly. Soft power dismantles them silently by making their logic irrelevant. You do not need to be overwhelming to be effective. You need to be consistent without being recruitable into the old reflex. Soft power is what remains when you no longer need to prove that you are powerful. It is not the force that wins the night. It is the force that changes what kind of nights are possible at all.
There is a strange silence that comes after the storm finally moves on. Not the silence of peace, yet the silence of listening for what might still fall. The air feels lighter, but the ground is unsure what to trust. Everything smells like it survived something. The day after the rain, we walk slower, we look at what is still standing, as if it might apologize for being here. We touch the walls that held, we check the roots that didn't surface. We count what was spared without celebrating too loudly. Some of us didn't believe the storm would ever end. Some of us learned to sleep through thunder as background noise. Some of us built our entire posture around bracing. Now the sound is gone and the nervous system keeps listening for it anyway. The day after the rain is not a victory parade. It is inventory. We look at the places that flooded quietly. We notice which leaks were always there and just became visible under pressure. We notice which foundations shifted without making headlines. We notice which relationships bent without breaking and which broke without bending at all. Relief is not instant trust. Relief is the body testing the air one breath at a time. The sun feels different after long darkness. It is gentler than we expected, less theatrical. It does not announce that the danger is gone. It only offers light and lets the body decide when it believes it. Some of the damage will take seasons to show. Some of the repair will begin immediately. Some of the questions we postpone will finally demand language. Storms rearrange responsibility as much as they rearrange land. The day after the rain teaches us the difference between survival and continuity. Survival asks, did I make it through? Continuity asks, what must change so I do not have to make it through this again? We wring water from our clothes and discover how heavy we were moving before. We take off armor that is no longer necessary and feel how much it shaped our gait. We learn again what it means to walk without expecting resistance at every step. The world does not reset just because the storm ends, it exhales. And in that exhale we finally hear each other clearly enough to begin deciding what stays. Some of us will rush to rebuild exactly what was there before. Some of us will hesitate because we finally see the fault lines. Both impulses come from fear. The work begins when fear is no longer the architect. The day after the rain is when the children step outside again. It is when voices carry farther. It is when the dust settles enough to see who is still accounted for. It is when grief and gratitude stand in the same doorway and refuse to sort themselves out. We do not need to rush the clarity. The ground is still soft. Footprints will matter more than speeches today. The day after the rain is not the end of weather. It is the beginning of choosing what kind of shelter we become to each other. Before the next sky darkens.
There is a moment the noise does not prepare you for. Not the fall of it, but the absence. The way the world suddenly feels too wide once the constant pressure lifts. The way silence lands not as rest at first, but as a question that no longer has distractions to hide behind. When the noise is gone, you hear the echo of yourself. You hear what urgency used to cover. You hear the tone of your own breathing without the rhythm of emergency to keep time. Some of us built our entire identity around being needed in storms, around reacting, around fixing, around holding the line while everything shook. When the shaking stops, we look at our hands and wonder what they are for now. The noise gave us instructions. It told us when to move, what to fear, what to ignore. It narrowed the field of choice until survival felt like purpose. Quiet gives no such orders. It offers space and waits to see what you place inside it. When the noise is gone, old conversations that never finished find their way back into the room. Grief that learned to stay invisible clears its throat. Desires you postponed for safety sit down across from you without apology. Silence is not empty. It is populated by everything that had no permission to speak before. Some will try to replace the noise immediately with work, with conflict, with constant information, with anyone willing to be loud enough to fill the sudden expansion. But substitution is not resolution, it is only relocation. When the noise is gone, you feel how exhausted you truly are. Not tired the way a job makes you tired, but tired the way holding your breath for years makes you tired. There is no soundtrack for that fatigue, only the slow negotiation between collapse and rest. Quiet rewrites the scale of importance. Things that once felt urgent begin to feel optional. Things that once felt impossible begin to feel merely difficult. The body starts to propose new questions. The mind is not yet skilled at answering. When the noise is gone, you may miss it. Not because it was kind, but because it was familiar. Chaos becomes home when it is the only grammar you ever learned. Silence feels foreign before it feels safe. This is the crossing most people do not name. The shift from reacting to choosing, from being summoned by alarms to being guided by intention. It is quieter than a breakthrough, it is heavier than relief. When the noise is gone, you begin to hear the difference. Between loneliness and solitude, between isolation and privacy, between emptiness and possibility, you begin to notice which impulses were planted by threat and which emerge without being chased. You begin to feel how much of your movement was shaped by avoidance instead of desire. Quiet does not demand an answer. It only waits. It waits to see what kind of person shows up when no one is telling you what matters most. when the noise is gone. The future stops shouting, the past stops narrating, the present grows audible in a way that cannot be scrolled past. And slowly, not triumphantly, not cleanly, you begin to discover what your life sounds like when it is no longer answering an alarm. Answering an alarm.
There is a version of us no one audits. The one that moves when the room is empty. The one that chooses when the audience is gone. The one that does not need to be consistent with its reputation. That version is the engine. Everything public is only the exhaust. We think character is demonstrated in crisis. It isn't. Crisis only reveals what was rehearsed in private.
What we practice in the dark is what shows up when the lights fail. What we forgive in the dark is what determines how we harm in daylight. What we excuse in the dark is what becomes policy in our relationships.
No one is watching when you decide whether to return the extra change. No one is filming when you choose whether to tell the easier lie. No one applauds when you refrain from the small cruelty that would have gone unnoticed.
But the nervous system records every repetition. It builds your future out of those micro decisions. We are shaped less by our declarations than by our defaults, the habits that activate before thought arrives. The shortcuts we use when we are tired, the truths we abandon first under pressure. You can believe in justice publicly and rehearse domination privately. You can preach compassion loudly and starve it quietly through neglect. The dark is where contradictions train, the light is where they perform. What you practice in the dark is what your body will choose. When fear shortens the horizon, you will not rise to the occasion. You will fall to the level of your preparation. This is not cynicism, this is neurology. The quiet choices accumulate, they layer like sediment. No single grain announces itself as a future, but enough of them become terrain.
Every time you stop yourself from saying the sharp thing, you weaken a reflex. Every time you sit with discomfort, instead of discharging it into someone else, you widen your margin of choice.
Every time you repair a harm that could have stayed invisible, you alter the architecture of your becoming. We want transformation to feel dramatic. We want it to arrive as revelation, but most of it arrives as repetition, as doing the small inconvenient right thing again and again, until it no longer feels heroic, just normal. The dark is not where evil lives. The dark is where training happens. It is where the unobserved self either sharpens its ethics or dulls them into efficiency. You are not betrayed by a single failure. You are shaped by what you normalize. What we practice in the dark decides what the world receives from us in the light. Not our intentions, not our explanations, but our reflexes. The future will be built by the things we did so often. They stop feeling like decisions. Choose carefully what you let become automatic. There is a strange humility in returning to the ordinary. After the language of awakening has passed, the dishes still wait, the traffic still argues, the inbox still fills. No revelation exempts you from gravity. We thought coming back would feel like descent. It feels more like responsibility. The world does not move aside because your perception changed. It asks whether your perception is strong enough to move with it, not above it, not against it, with it. You carry new questions into old routines. You feel the friction immediately. The smallest task now asks, are you doing this consciously? Or are you hiding in repetition again? Ordinary life is where most truths fail, because it does not amplify them. It tests them quietly in tone and timing and follow through. Returning to ordinary means you stop mistaking intensity for meaning. You stop treating urgency as a compass. You begin to notice how much transformation is required just to keep a promise to yourself on a Tuesday. The grocery store becomes a laboratory. The kitchen becomes a policy chamber. The commute becomes a negotiation between reflex and intention. Nothing looks tragic, nothing looks heroic, everything looks consequential. Here is where you learn whether your new awareness was dependent on the room that gave it to you, or whether it has learned to breathe on its own. Here is where you learn whether presence survives boredom. Returning to ordinary means you no longer search for special moments to validate your change. You measure it by how you treat the cashier, by how you argue without annihilating, by how you rest without narrating. It is failure. The ordinary does not praise you, it does not oppose you. It simply records what you repeat. You realize slowly that the extraordinary was never a destination. It was training for how to carry yourself in places that will never clap. Returning to ordinary is not the loss of the sacred. It is the relocation of it into posture, into timing, into how you choose your words when no one is counting syllables. You stop waiting for proof that the moment mattered. You begin to produce the proof with how you live when nothing feels dramatic. Ordinary life is not the aftermath of meaning. It is the site where meaning survives or collapses into memory. The return is not a failure of ascent. It is the test of whether ascent was integrated. And so you return, not as you were, not as who you imagined you would become, but as someone now responsible for making the invisible changes visible through repetition.
We kept thinking the spiral meant escape, up and out, away from what hurt, away from what repeated, away from the versions of ourselves we were tired of carrying. But a spiral does not abandon its center, it revisits it, with different hands, with different breath, with a different level of responsibility. We return to the same questions with deeper ears. We touched the same wounds with steadier palms. We stood in the same fields with a wider weather inside the chest. This is how the spiral holds. Not by erasing the past, but by changing how the past is met. We thought growth would feel like distance. It feels like density, more memory in the same body, more consequence in the same decisions, more meaning in the same streets. The spiral taught us that repetition is not failure. Unconscious repetition is returning with attention, is a different motion entirely. We kept arriving at familiar places and wondering why they no longer fit. It was not because the places shrank, it was because we brought more of ourselves back with us. The spiral holds grief without trapping it. It holds joy without demanding it perform. It holds contradiction without asking it to pick a side. It holds history without letting history drive. We move forward by circling, we stabilize by revisiting, we mature by meeting the same moments with less illusion and more skill. This is why the lessons repeat, this is why the themes return, not because we fail to learn them, but because learning deepens each time we are willing to stay present longer. The spiral holds without squeezing, it does not rush us toward arrival, it keeps inviting us back to see whether we are meeting the moment with the same armor or with an upgraded nervous system. Some days the spiral feels like stagnation. Some days it feels like momentum. The difference is rarely in the terrain, it is in the posture we bring to it.
We are not moving in circles, we are moving through turns, and each turn carries residue from the one before it, not as a burden, but as a record of adaptation. The spiral holds because it is honest about the work of being human. That clarity must be returned to, that repair must be rehearsed, that awareness must be practiced or it calcifies into memory. If you expected a straight line, the spiral feels like delay. If you expected transformation to be final, the spiral feels like betrayal. But if you expected to keep becoming, the spiral feels like home. We are held not by progress, but by recurrence with consciousness, not by distance from who we were, but by how differently we meet who we are now. This is how the spiral holds, not by lifting us out of the world, but by giving us a structure for returning without collapsing into what we used to be. And so we keep turning, not because we are lost, because we are learning how to stay.
Now everything was lost in the fire. Even when it felt like it took everything. Some things were hiding in their own density, too unglamorous for flame, too ordinary to be noticed by disaster. The things that didn't burn are not the things that made headlines. They are not the loud ideas, they are not the performances. They are the unnoticed structures that kept holding weight while attention was elsewhere. The habit of checking on people without announcing it, the instinct to share food when there was barely enough, the way some hands learned to repair without waiting for permission or credit, the way a few voices kept speaking calmly when panic was profitable. These did not burn. These did not burn. Some promises survived because they were never declared, they were practiced instead. Some bonds survived because they were woven outside a spectacle. Some integrity survived because it was never loud enough to be challenged directly. We expected survival to look dramatic, it looked procedural. The things that didn't burn are not romantic, they are dependable. They are not inspiring, they are repeatable. A structure that holds quietly is rarely thanked, it is only noticed when it fails. We walk now among foundations we did not know how to name before. We realize how much was carrying us without asking to be believed. We realize how much resilience looks like boredom from a distance. Some of what endured did not come from strength, it came from flexibility. Things that could have been long enough to outweigh the heat. Some of what endured did not resist the fire, it learned how to pass through it with less surface area. We find jars of water we forgot we stored. We find tools that were never displayed. We find notes written for no audience that somehow kept the whole operation possible. The myth says only the loud survive, the aftermath says otherwise. The things that didn't burn are teaching us a quieter curriculum. What lasts is not always what shines. What lasts is what functions without applause. What lasts is what doesn't require belief to keep working. Not everything fragile was weak, not everything strong was visible. We begin to rebuild not from the ashes, but from the things that were never reduced to ash. Shed all the unnoticed scaffolding, the habits that held, the people who kept showing up without turning it into a story. The future will not be built only from what survived the fire. It will be built from what never needed the fire. In order to prove its worth, these are the things that didn't burn, and they are the reason anything else can rise.
We learned early how to keep a calm exterior, while the atmosphere inside kept rearranging furniture. We mastered neutral faces, professional tones, weatherless voices that fooled the room. But inside the walls, pressure systems kept forming, fronts colliding without permission. No one taught us how to read internal weather, only how to perform acceptable climates. Sunny for interviews, clear for family gatherings, partly cloudy for grief that couldn't be explained. We built entire architectures to hide storms, smiles as insulation, jokes as evacuation routes, work as a noise machine so the thunder wouldn't be heard. But the body tracks barometric shifts, it flinches before the lightning shows itself. It knows when something unsaid is gaining mass, it knows when silence has become a pressure chamber. Some of our anger is just unprocessed humidity. Some of our fatigue is the cost of holding back wind. Some of our despair is a season that never got permission to declare itself. You can reinforce the structure for years, but weather is patient. It does not need permission to arrive, it only needs conditions. We wonder why we snap without warning, why tears appear without context, why resentment floods rooms that felt stable yesterday. It is not randomness, it is atmosphere finally changing state. No one collapses suddenly, they saturate first. Weather inside the walls is what forms when expression is delayed too long, when truth is bartered for harmony, when pain is stored in polite containers until the container fails. Some storms are inherited, pressure passed down like a family climate. Generations of unshed rain, generations of unbroken silence, generations learning to call drought normal. The storm is not the enemy, the suppression is. Healthy land floods sometimes, healthy systems discharge, healthy skies release what they carry. Only stagnant air pretends it can hold everything forever. We are not malfunctioning when we overflow. We are completing cycles that were interrupted. Learning to speak is learning to ventilate. Learning to cry is learning to drain. Learning to say no is learning to shift the jet stream before it becomes a hurricane. Weather inside the walls does not need judgment, it needs circulation. Some of us will not feel peace until we allow our interior seasons to finally be acknowledged as real, until we stop demanding dryness from climates built to move. The goal is not eternal calm, the goal is livable weather. To let storms pass through without taking the house. To let sun return without pretending it never rained. To let winter be winter without calling it failure. Weather inside the walls becomes destructive only when it is denied its sky.
Give it air, give it language, give it timing.
And the house will stop shaking.
Air, give it language, give it timing.
Every time the pressure changes.
Give it air, give it language, give it timing. Give it air, give it language, give it timing.
Nobody teaches you how long the middle is. They teach the beginning. They romanticize the breakthrough. They mythologize the collapse. But the middle, the long and eventful stretch where nothing resolves, is where most lives are actually lived. The middle is where the adrenaline runs out, where the nerves stop shaking, where the audience goes home, where the question becomes not, can I change? But can I continue without being watched? This is the part without music cues, no swelling strings, no countdown clocks, just the slow weather of repetition. And the unglamorous weight of days that look the same from the outside. The long middle is where doubt learns patience, where faith learns to operate without intensity, where discipline replaces motivation because motivation will not survive this stretch. You wake up and do the thing again, not because it feels meaningful, because it still needs to be done. You keep a promise no one remembers you made, you tend a wound that no longer bleeds but still hasn't closed. The long middle is where people quietly quit, not in protest and exhaustion, in small increments, a little less effort each week until the vision is technically still alive but no longer being fed. It's where shortcuts become tempting again, where old habits start sounding reasonable, where compromise puts on clean clothes and introduces itself as efficiency. The long middle is where your reasons are audited, not by critics, by time. No one praises persistence when it is no longer dramatic. No one cheers the 10th repetition. Only the first, only the breakthrough, but structures are built in the repetitions no one applauds. You don't fail in the middle because something dramatic went wrong. You fail because nothing dramatic happens and you mistake quiet for futility. The middle is not neutral, it is active pressure. It shapes you by asking the same question daily. Are you still choosing this? Or are you just continuing because you don't know what else to stop doing? You learn here that belief is a renewable resource only if you treat it like fuel instead of a one-time ignition. The long middle teaches the difference between identity and commitment. Identity is who you say you are, commitment is who you remain when nothing reinforces it. Some days the middle feels like stagnation. Some days it feels like burial. Some days it feels like apprenticeship to a future you cannot yet imagine needing you. The long middle is where the old self keeps trying to return, not as a villain but as a convenience. It offers you relief from effort in exchange for the slow erosion of coherence. And every day you decide, sometimes clearly, sometimes half asleep, whether you will pay the cost of remaining aligned without the compensation of certainty. The long middle does not reward you with proof, it rewards you with durability. It builds a version of you that does not collapse when the next storm tests the frame. One day you will look back and realize the middle was not an interruption, it was the actual work.
They buried it more than once. Under contracts, under shame, under exhaustion. Under the official story of how things were supposed to end. They stacked explanations on top of it until it looked like nothing could still be moving underneath. But something kept tapping, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to say, I am still here. What refused to die did not survive because it was armored, it survived because it was necessary. Some instincts outlast every program, some hungers outlive every suppression. Some truths go dormant, instead of disappearing they wait for conditions, they wait for cracks. We thought it was over because we couldn't hear it anymore. But silence is not extinction, silence is often incubation. What refused to die learned how to shrink its profile, it learned how to pass as background. It learned how to look unimportant long enough to avoid capture. It learned how to hide in repetition, in ordinary schedules and gestures too small to regulate. It waited in the way hands still reached for each other, even when touching was discouraged. It waited in the way voices lowered instead of going silent. It waited in the way some people kept building without calling it hope. They told us the era had closed. They told us the window had passed. They told us the language was outdated. They told us the dream had been archived. But what refused to die was never attached to permission. It did not need belief to continue, it only needed breath. Some things survive by not winning. They survive by not announcing themselves as threats. They survive by becoming too distributed to eliminate, too ordinarily to be targeted. What refused to die made itself quiet enough to pass through the detectors. It did not argue with the narrative, it outlasted it. We are standing inside its patience now, inside the long strategy of something that never planned to be spectacular, only durable. Every time you chose coherence when incoherence was cheaper, it grew. Every time you repaired what could have been abandoned unnoticed, it grew. Every time you refused to erase yourself for the sake of smooth passage, it grew.
You thought you were just surviving, you were feeding it. What refused to die was not waiting for rescue, it was waiting for enough carriers to realize what they were already holding. Some futures do not arrive with banners, they seep upward through pressure and time. They emerge not as revolutions, but as inevitabilities that took the long way around. What refused to die is not loud now, but it is no longer alone. It is no longer hiding in a single chest. It moved through many bodies as a shared, quiet insistence that the story is not finished. They said it was over. It kept breathing anyway. And now it has a voice again. Not to conquer, not to dominate, but to continue.
There is work that never becomes content. It does not crop well, it does not summarize cleanly. It does not resolve into a quote. It happens off camera, in moments too ordinary to be archived. No one shares the conversation where harm is named without theatrics. No one posts the apology that arrives on time and doesn't need an audience to make it real. No one uploads the boundary that is held quietly at the cost of popularity. The work that can't be posted still builds the future faster than anything that trends. You will not be rewarded for most of it. There is no metric for restraint. There is no algorithm for dignity. There is no badge for choosing the harder repair over the easier narrative. Some of the most important decisions of your life will be made in rooms where no one agrees with you, and no one will ever know what you prevented by refusing to escalate. You will clean messes that were not officially yours. You will absorb impact that never makes a record. You will choose restraint when performance would be more profitable. This will feel unfair. It is, and it is also how continuity is protected. The work that can't be posted is the quiet refusal to weaponize truth. It is the choice to lower your voice instead of sharpening your argument. It is staying in the conversation after the outcome stops favoring your pride. It is long minutes of listening that cannot be summarized without betraying what happened. It is repairing the same misunderstanding for the third time without announcing your patience as virtue. You will be tempted to document this work just to prove it exists. That temptation is understandable, but the work's power depends on not being converted into proof. Some repairs fail the moment they are narrated. Some trust collapses the moment it is exhibited. Some reckonings only function in the absence of spectators. The work that can't be posted is not anti-visibility. It is anti-extraction. It refuses to turn every moral act into currency. It teaches you where your ethics actually lie, not in what you declare, but in what you continue to do after the declaration would have gotten more attention. This kind of work moves slowly because it is not fed by adrenaline. It moves on the calories of repeatability, on showing up again without reinforcement, on staying when there is nothing left to prove. You may never be credited for this labor. You may never be thanked in the room.
something that should have ruptured somehow held. Somehow held. Somehow held. The work that can't be posted is not invisible to the structures it stabilizes. It just refuses to be monetized by them. History is shaped less by what is announced than by what is maintained. Most of what endures is carried by people who never become symbols. If your days feel quiet despite the stakes being high, you may be doing the work that actually lasts. Not everything that matters needs to be seen. Some of it only needs to be kept.
We mistook acceleration for evolution. We mistook scale for wisdom. We mistook information density for interior development. And for a while the illusion was convincing, because the instruments kept improving faster than the questions that governed them. What we built could calculate with astonishing precision, and still remain illiterate in consequence. What we optimized for output, we neglected to tutor in meaning. This is not a moral failure alone. It is a design failure. A civilization is not merely a network of markets and utilities. It is an agreement about what counts as a life worth sustaining. It is an operating system for attention, for injury, for inheritance, for what is permitted to remain unfinished. For generations we refined tools faster than we refined our capacity to inhabit them without amputating our sensitivities. We outsourced memory to machines before teaching the nervous system how to metabolize loss without becoming extraction-based. So the systems became efficient and the humans became optimized for surviving inside systems that never learned how to witness them. Becoming human again does not mean returning to the past. It means interrogating the assumptions that quietly replaced it. What was once called character was slowly rebranded as inconvenience. What was once called restraint was reframed as inefficiency. What was once called reverence was demoted to sentiment. And so we became highly functional, remarkably mobile, and increasingly unattended within ourselves. A culture can only run on unprocessed grief for so many generations before it begins to treat pain as a renewable resource, before it markets trauma as identity, before it converts survival into spectacle. Becoming human again requires not a new ideology, but a re-entry into the physiology of being affected. It requires relearning how to be altered without immediately converting alteration into content. The ancient problem was not ignorance. It was scale without integration. It was knowledge without ritual to slow it, power without apprenticeship to consequence. We learn how to split the atom before we learn how to sit with a contradiction without annihilating the person who carried it. Becoming human again will not be achieved through legislation alone, nor through technology alone, nor through mass psychological reframing as a commodity. It will occur only when enough individuals learn to tolerate the interior weather that Humbeme's honest perception. The modern crisis is not that we feel too much, it is that we industrialized avoidance. We built whole economies on preventing the nervous system from completing natural cycles of alarm, grief, repair, and return. So the cycle stalled, so the signal became static, so the static began to sound like identity. To become human again is to dismantle the reflexive urgency to weaponize awareness. It is to learn how to hold knowledge without immediately converting it into dominance. It is to rediscover the distinction between persuasion and coherence. A human being is not a productivity unit temporarily distracted by emotion. A human being is a meaning-sensing organism whose technologies outpaced its ethical musculature, and musculature can be trained.
Becoming human again is slow because reflexes adapt faster than conscience. It is uneven because nervous systems update at different rates. It is resisted because institutions are optimized for behavioral continuity, not interior renovation. There will be no single moment where we collectively arrive. Only phases where the incoherence becomes too audible to ignore, followed by phases of quiet repatterning that never make headlines while they are stabilizing. Human again does not mean gentle at all times. It means accurate. It means proportionate. It means responsive without being vaporized by reaction. It means rediscovering the courage to remain effective without demanding immediate resolution, to remain conscious without requiring spectacle, to remain alive to consequence without converting every consequence into catastrophe. The work is neither nostalgic nor utopian. It is infrastructural at the level of psyche. It asks not what world we want to inhabit, but what kind of organisms we must become to inhabit any world without destroying it. Becoming human again is not a return. It is an upgrade that feels like a remembering, and it will not be achieved by consensus. It will be achieved by repetition, quiet, distributed, unglamorous, until the exception becomes the norm without ever being announced as a revolution. This is not the end of collage. It is the beginning of competence inside it.
Repair is misunderstood as reversal, as though what was broken could simply be returned to a prior configuration without residue. But systems do not forget stress. They record it in microfractures and compensatory habits, in silent redundancies that only appear under the next load. Repair, therefore, is not restoration of origin. It is the construction of a new stability around an altered interior. Every collapse rewrites the boundary conditions of what can safely stand again. To rebuild without accounting for that rewrite is not optimism. It is negligence disguised as hope. We inherited a world that treated repair as an emergency measure, rather than a permanent discipline. We learned to intervene only when failure was visible, only when the cost of ignoring breakdown exceeded the cost of addressing it. By then, damage had already generalized. True repair is anticipatory. It lives upstream of catastrophe. It is quieter than prevention because it never needs to announce what did not happen. The architecture of repair begins with diagnosis. Not the superficial naming of damage, but the tracing of pressure through time. Not merely where the structure failed, but where it compensated too long, where it carried unsustainable loads in silence, until silence hardened into norm. Most failures are not abrupt, they are cumulative. They are composed of small exemptions, from accountability performed daily until exception masquerades as rule. To repair is to reverse this gradient, to make the exceptional act again, instead of the background condition to reinstall friction where extraction once felt smooth. Repair is not kind in the sentimental sense. It is exacting. It demands inventory. It demands the naming of thresholds. It demands the courage to retire structures that still appear functional, but are no longer coherent with the life they serve. Institutions resist repair because repair exposes original design assumptions. It reveals what was never meant to sustain bodies, only outputs. It reveals where efficiency was prioritized over human continuity. And continuity is the true test. A system that cannot be repaired without extreme disruption was never designed for shared inhabitation, it was designed for throughput. The architecture of repair requires spaces where failure can be acknowledged without becoming spectacle, where harm can be named without being immediately monetized as scandal, where responsibility can move without acquiring moral annihilation. This kind of architecture is structurally unpopular,
It generates no heroes, it produces no villains large enough to absorb collective projection. It insists on complexity where outrage demands simplification. Repair at scale requires distributed competence rather than centralized virtue. It requires many people making moderately good decisions consistently, instead of a few people making perfect declarations occasionally. It also requires time horizons longer than electoral cycles, longer than market quarters, longer than individual survival narratives. You cannot repair a civilization with the psychology of a crisis response. Crisis logic sharpens reactions, repair logic stabilizes conditions. They are not interchangeable modes of operation. The deepest repairs occur below the level of policy. They occur in expectation structures. What behavior is assumed, what harm is normalized, what labor is invisibilized as merely how things are. When these expectations shift, laws tend to follow, slowly, reluctantly, often claiming authorship of changes that were already metabolized socially. Repair also demands grief, because some structures cannot be repurposed ethically. Some legacies cannot be composted without mourning. Some advantages cannot be retained without reproducing the harm that produced them. This is where most repair efforts falter, at the point where accountability is no longer abstract, at the point where repair requires actual relinquishment rather than symbolic support. Yet no structure collapses solely from critique. It collapses when maintenance is withdrawn. Repair is, therefore, a reallocation of maintenance, away from what cannot survive with integrity, toward what has not yet been given adequate care. A repaired world will not look like a perfected world. It will look like a monitored one. A world that expects strain, plans for error, and refuses to treat failure as an anomaly that can be legislated away. The architecture of repair does not promise permanence, it promises recoverability. And recoverability is the highest form of resilience a mortal system can attain. We are not tasked with building what will never break. We are tasked with building what can be broken without becoming irreparable. This is the labor beneath every lasting culture, not utopia, not catastrophe, but the patient engineering of survivable futures.
Every civilization eventually mistakes coordination for command. It confuses influence with authorship. It assumes that because a pattern can be directed, it must be capable of total submission. This is the first category error of power. Control is not the management of complexity. It is the fantasy that complexity can be abolished without abolishing life itself. We built systems to predict outcomes and began to believe we had designed inevitability. We learned to shape environments for compliance and mistook reduced variance for safety. But variance is not the flaw of living systems. It is the evidence that they are still alive. Total control always arrives framed as protection, as optimization, as risk reduction, as benevolence with a spreadsheet. Yet control is an extractive relationship to uncertainty. It does not tolerate what it cannot pre-specify. It does not permit what it cannot dominate. It does not trust what it cannot audit. The deeper the architecture of control grows, the more it must behave as though surprise itself is the enemy. But surprise is the signature of reality. A system that cannot tolerate surprise is a system that has declared war on emergence, and emergence is how life solves problems no planner can anticipate. The fantasy of total control is not born of strength, it is born of terror. The terror of allowing outcomes to exceed authorship. The terror of being affected by what one cannot command. The terror of discovering that power does not equal immunity from consequence. We automated enforcement before we automated wisdom. We scaled surveillance before we scaled discernment. We refined prediction before we refined responsibility. So the grid grew precise while the interior world grew brittle. Control always demands expansion because it is never finished being anxious. Every variable secured reveals another that is not. Every perimeter stabilized produces a new frontier of fear. Every success increases reliance on the method that achieved it. Eventually, the system no longer asks whether control is warranted. It only asks how much more is required to maintain the illusion that it has already solved uncertainty. But uncertainty is not a defect in creation. It is the medium through which adaptation occurs. To annihilate it is to annihilate the future's ability to respond to what has not yet been imagined. The limit of control is not technological, it is epistemological. It is the limit of what can be known in advance about a world that is not finished becoming. Every attempt to surpass this limit converts living organisms into variables that must be simplified before they can be governed. This is where efficiency quietly mutates into violence. Control produces brittle stability. It holds until it does not. It suppresses error until error accumulates invisibly. Then collapse arrives not as failure, but as the delayed invoice for denied complexity. No system ever collapses from chaos alone. It collapses from the inability to metabolize chaos without insisting on domination as the only response. The opposite of control is not anarchy, it is adaptive governance. It is the capacity to respond without presuming omniscience, to coordinate without demanding submission, to stabilize without annihilating variance. True power is not exemption from uncertainty. It is literacy in uncertainty. The mature civilization is not the one that eliminates unpredictability, but the one that learns how to cooperate with it without panicking into domination. Every structure that seeks eternity through control eventually becomes its own limiting factor. Every structure that permits revision extends its relevance beyond the lifespan of any singular logic. The limit of control is not the end of order. It is the beginning of intelligence. For intelligence is not the ability to enforce outcome, it is the ability to remain coherent when outcome remains unresolved. And any system that cannot remain coherent without dominating what it cannot foresee has already confessed the fragility of its authority.
Every generation inherits a world it did not author, and is judged by how it modifies what it did not design. This is the quiet paradox of continuity. We are responsible for outcomes we did not initiate, but are obligated to steward once they arrive in our hands. Ethics at scale is not the art of purity. It is the discipline of managing inheritance without pretending innocence. We are born into unfinished systems. Economies mid-sentence, ecologies mid-injury, institutions mid-compromise. None of us consented to the initial conditions. All of us participate in their extension by the simple act of continuing to live inside them. Continuity is not neutral. To continue a system is to endorse its direction of travel unless deliberate force is applied otherwise. The moral error of many civilizations is not cruelty alone, but unexamined persistence, the belief that because something functions, it must therefore be legitimate. The belief that because something existed before us, it absolves us of responsibility for its consequences now. But inheritance does not confer exemption. It confers burden. The ethics of continuity begins not with the question, is this tradition ancient? But with the question, what does this tradition continue to do to living bodies? Duration is not a defense. Longevity is not justification. Survival is not proof of righteousness. Many harmful structures persist not because they are defended explicitly, But because they are administratively convenient, they remain intact through the quiet momentum of daily compliance, through routines that pass for necessity, only because alternatives require imagination. The greatest ethical failures of history were rarely announced as moral choices. They were processed as scheduling decisions, budgetary constraints, logistical efficiencies, risk mitigation protocols. Evil, in its most durable form, presents itself as procedure. The ethics of continuity asks, what systems are we maintaining? Simply because dismantling them would require us to admit how long we have mistaken stability for virtue. It also asks the harder question: what fragile, half-functioning goods are we obligated to sustain, precisely because they are not yet efficient enough to justify themselves to a market? Not everything worthy of continuation can pass a profitability test. Not everything necessary for life can present a quarterly justification. Continuity is the moral laboratory in which ideals are either degraded into slogans or translated into living structures. It is where values stop being aspirational and begin to incur real maintenance costs. You learn your true ethics, not by what you condemn, but by what you continue to fund, what you continue to excuse, what you continue to call unfortunate but unavoidable. The ethics of continuity is mercilessly practical. It does not ask what you believe. It asks what you sustain with your time, your money, your silence, your exhaustion. There is no clean break from history. There is only the redistribution of its unfinished business. To live ethically inside continuity is to refuse the comfort of imagined exits. To accept that you are not called to stand outside the system as a judge, but to stand inside it as a modifier who cannot escape implication. This is why reform is always incomplete. This is why repair is never finished. This is why every generation is tempted to declare the work either solved or impossible. Both declarations function as methods of abandonment. The ethics of continuity does not permit either despair or triumphalith, and it demands stamina. It demands the humility to accept incremental change without surrendering to incremental injustice. We are not asked to perfect the world. We are asked to make it more inhabitable than we found it, without lying to ourselves about the cost of doing so. The deepest moral act of any era is not the spectacle of its ideals, but the accuracy with which it tends the consequences of its existence. Continuity is not passive inheritance. It is an active moral position, taken every day without announcement. And every day we either choose to reduce the future's liability, or to roll today's expediencies forward as someone else's emergency. That choice is the true ledger of history.
Power survives collapse more reliably than structure. Buildings fall, titles dissolve, markets rupture. But the instinct to command rarely disappears with the systems that once gave it legal clothing. It simply migrates to whatever scaffolding remains. The most dangerous moment for any society is not the peak of its domination, but the moment immediately after it has learned to repair, for repair restores capacity before it restores ethical restraint. The question is never whether power will reappear. It always does.
The question is what mythology it will wear when it does. Before collapse, power is defended as necessity. After collapse, power is defended as protection. The language changes, the reflex does not. The danger after repair is not the return of the old tyrant. It is the emergence of the familiar reflex inside new hands that sincerely believe themselves different. Power after repair no longer says, I rule because I am strong. It says, I must coordinate because I understand the damage. Understanding becomes justification. Competence becomes credential. Trauma becomes moral currency. To have suffered does not grant immunity from reproducing domination. It only grants access to better rationalizations for it. The newly repaired world is especially susceptible to benevolent control. Management framed as guardianship, authority framed as fatigue, surveillance framed as care, restriction framed as precaution. And because people remember chaos, they accept discipline more easily, so long as it does not resemble the cruelty they just escaped. Power after repair learns to speak softly, it learns to cite safety, it learns to present itself as temporary, it learns to borrow the language of healing while quietly reinstalling asymmetry. This is where many revolutions quietly invert into administrations. The problem is not power itself. Coordination is inevitable in any shared project. The problem is unexamined accumulation. The problem is unreciprocated authority. The problem is the inability of a system to imagine order without hierarchy. Power becomes pathological when it no longer remembers that it is meant to circulate. In healthy systems, authority is transient, specific, and accountable to consequence. In damaged systems, authority congeals. It begins to confuse position with insight. It begins to confuse stability with entitlement. The repaired world will be tempted to centralize decision-making for efficiency. Efficiency will feel ethical after years of breakdown. The speed of coordination will be mistaken for the justice of outcome. This is how repair quietly plants the seeds of its own future rupture. There is a point at which leadership must deliberately weaken itself in order for its society to remain strong. This is the point most leaders refuse to cross because relinquishment is indistinguishable from risk until trust becomes operational rather than rhetorical. Power after repair must learn a discipline rarer than restraint, self-decay. The intentional shedding of authority before authority hardens into necessity. The willingness to become obsolete before being overthrown becomes the only option. Most institutions cannot imagine this. They can imagine reform, they can imagine rotation, they can imagine optics, they cannot imagine voluntary diminishment. And so power survives repair and calls it survival responsibility. The deepest danger after healing is not relapse into old violence. It is the normalization of new inequities that wear the face of stability. The question that must never be allowed to silence itself is this: who gains expanded reach as order returns? Who becomes newly optional as efficiency improves? Who decides what risks are tolerable when their own bodies are not among the collateral? Power is not proven ethical by the absence of immediate catastrophe. It is proven ethical by its capacity to be refused without punishment. The true test of a repaired society is not whether it functions smoothly, but whether dissent can survive inside it without being reclassified as malfunction. A system that cannot tolerate interruption is not healed, it is merely stabilized its pathology. Power after repair must remain provisional, or it will become inevitable, when inevitability is the final aesthetic of domination. The future does not fear strong structures, it fears structures that have forgotten how to give themselves back to the people they were meant to serve. Repair without limits on power is only delayed collapse wearing a quieter uniform. Say next, and we carry the thesis forward into the next chamber. Speed is the first false god of collapse. When coherence begins to fracture, velocity disguises disorientation as momentum. Fast looks like forward to a nervous system in threat. But acceleration is not direction. It is only movement unburdened by assessment. Civilizations under strain do not ask, where are we going? They ask, how quickly can we get out of this feeling? And so policy becomes sprint, markets become reflex, media becomes siren, and urgency replaces thought as the organizing principle of choice. Speed feels like leadership when fear is the background climate. But fear is an unreliable architect. What moves fastest is not what moves farthest. It is what burns hottest in the shortest window of oxygen. We praised agility without interrogating its cost. We worshiped disruption without auditing its debris field. We ranked innovation by execution time, rather than by survivability of consequence. And because disasters unfold more slowly than decisions, we mistook delay and damage for absence of it. Speed externalizes complexity. It ejects deliberation into future problems. It converts uncertainty into liability, rather than material for insight. It strips feedback loops of relevance by outrunning the evidence they generate. This is how systems grow blind while appearing efficient. The faster we move, the less room remains for moral friction. The smaller the window becomes in which reflection can meaningfully intervene. Eventually, ethics is retrofitted as a communication strategy instead of functioning as a constraint on behavior. Speed is not neutral. It selects for certain kinds of actors, those who tolerate risk being exported, those who benefit from asymmetry, those whose own stability is insulated from the turbulence generated by motion elsewhere. Slowness distributes consequence. Speed centralizes profit. The fastest systems often appear most powerful because they do not feel the cost of their own velocity. That cost is absorbed by environments, by laboring bodies, by time horizons too stretched to defend themselves. What cannot speak in real time is what speed most readily exploits. Ecologies move at the pace of regeneration. Coherence moves at the pace of integration. Trust moves at the pace of consistent evidence. Trauma moves at the pace of nervous repair. Meaning moves at the pace of narrative digestion. These are not delays. They are throughput limits embedded in think systems. When speed exceeds these limits, it does not produce progress. It produces backlog, deferred grief, deferred repair, deferred reckoning, which later returns not as inconvenience, but as crisis. Speed as strategy promises escape from pressure. In reality, it compounds pressure across time until release becomes catastrophic. The fantasy of speed is that it eliminates stuckness. The reality of speed is that it often relocates stuckness to layers too deep to be politically addressed until collapse forces the conversation. The slow work is not inefficient. It is load-bearing. It is the only form of motion that allows correction before rupture. It is the only tempo at which contradiction can be metabolized without being weaponized. A society addicted to speed will always confuse reaction for intelligence. It will always confuse velocity for vision. It will always interpret pause as weakness because pause threatens the illusion of control. But the capacity to pause is the first evidence of sovereignty. A system that cannot slow itself, cannot govern itself, it can only escalate. The failure of speed as strategy is not that it does not work, it is that it works too well for the wrong objectives. It optimizes for throughput over endurance, for dominance over coordination, for spectacle over survival. The future cannot be sprinted into. It must be born, it must be scaffolded, it must be periodically stopped so its internal stresses can be measured before they exceed material limits. The true strategic advantage of any lasting civilization is not how fast it can move, but how precisely it can decide when not to. For only a system that can restrain its own acceleration can choose its direction instead of being carried by its own momentum into outcomes it no longer recognizes as chosen. Speed will always seduce a frightened intelligence, but endurance is the intelligence that survives its own fear. And endurance, not velocity, is the only strategy that has ever outlived its architects. Cha.
Attention is the last commons we forgot to legally define before it was enclosed. Air was named, water was named, land was named. But the field of awareness itself, the medium through which all meaning must pass, was left structurally unprotected, and so it was quietly appropriated. We treated attention as an individual faculty instead of a shared ecological resource. We assume what happens inside the skull cannot be governed like territory. This assumption allowed extraction to proceed without a vocabulary for harm. But attention is not private property. It is a public good distributed through bodies. It is where learning circulates, where consent becomes legible, where narratives propagate, where futures take preliminary shape. Whoever governs attention governs the preconditions of choice. To redirect attention is not merely to persuade, it is to rearrange the probability field of what can be perceived as relevant. It is to decide which signals are amplified, which are buried, which become repetitive enough to feel like truth, and which are rendered inaudible through neglect. This is not messaging, this is architecture. The enclosure of land produced dispossession of labor. The enclosure of attention produces dispossession of agency. When one's perceptual field is structurally occupied, choice becomes downstream of provisioning. You may believe freely, so long as your inputs remain governed. The commodification of attention did not require force, it required convenience. It offered relief from cognitive load in exchange for continuous access to the nervous system. It substituted curation for agency and labeled the substitution user experience. Thus the commons was partitioned quietly, and consumption was confused for participation. A public square once demanded presence, now it demands engagement. Presence is reciprocal, engagement is extractive. In reciprocal spaces, attention circulates. In extractive spaces, it is harvested. The tragedy of the attention commons is not that it is exploited, it is that its exploitation appears natural to those born into its enclosure. We now call fragmentation multitasking. We call saturation connectivity. We call disorientation information overload, as though overload were mediological rather than engineered. The nervous system did not fail to adapt. It adapted exactly as expected under continuous partial capture. Shallow focus became efficient behavior, reaction became economical, depth became expensive. Citizens trained in fractured attention are more governable because coherence requires uninterrupted time. Discontinuous attention weakens long-range causality. It makes consequence appear episodic instead of cumulative. This is not merely a cultural issue. It is a civic one. A population that cannot stabilize attention cannot sustain deliberation. A population that cannot sustain deliberation cannot govern itself without substitution.
Substitution arrives as technocracy, as populism, as spectacle, as algorithmic paternalism. Any structure that promises to decide on behalf of those too cognitively taxed to remain oriented. Thus the enclosure of attention quietly produces the conditions for the enclosure of political agency. To reclaim attention as a commons is not to demand constant seriousness, it is to recover the right to depth without penalty, to recover the right to presence without interruption, taxation, to recover the right to boredom as a prerequisite for imagination. A protected attention commons would not outlaw stimulation, it would regulate capture, it would distinguish invitation from coercion, it would treat uninterrupted cognition as infrastructure rather than luxury. No society can remain self-governing while outsourcing the management of its collective awareness to profit-maximizing signal systems. This is not about screens, it is about sovereignty of perception. The future will not be decided only by who controls energy, water, or data. It will be decided by who controls the bandwidth through which meaning itself must travel. To defend attention as a commons is to defend the precondition of thought. It is to defend the interval in which alternatives are even imaginable. It is to defend the right to be affected by what has not already been packaged as relevant.
A civilization that cannot protect its attention will not notice when it no longer chooses its direction. It will only feel the momentum after the turn has already occurred. The deepest enclosure is the one that convinces the enclosed that they are merely busy, not governed. And the final frontier of repair will not be fought over land or code, but over the quiet territory of what we are still allowed to notice in ourselves without being interrupted.
Memory is never neutral. It is curated, edited, weighted, and distributed with consequences, long after the events themselves have vanished from sight. What a society remembers is not simply what occurred. It is what it decided to carry forward as instruction. Every civilization survives on a selective archive. Some wounds are preserved as warnings. Some triumphs are preserved as doctrine. Some crimes are dissolved into euphemism. Forgetting is not absence. Forgetting is policy enacted without announcement. History does not disappear. It migrates into infrastructure, into habit, into law, into posture and accent, into what feels normal before it feels chosen. Memory is political because it determines which suffering becomes precedent and which suffering becomes noise, which losses are allowed to instruct and which are required to remain unproductive. A society that controls its memory does not need to control its future directly, it only needs to shape what futures can be imagined as continuous with what is already known. The archive is not merely a record, it is a boundary. When memory is monopolized, dissent must reinvent itself without lineage. Each generation is forced to rediscover what the previous one already survived. Thus time is wasted not by ignorance, but by enforced amnesia. Power prefers short memory. Short memory is easier to govern because it cannot assemble patterns. Isolated events provoke reaction. Patterns provoke accountability. This is why repression often targets teachers, libraries, elders, archives, languages, ceremony, not because these hold weapons, but because they hold continuity. A people without memory can be persuaded that conditions are unprecedented when they are merely cyclical. They can be persuaded that harm is accidental when it is structural. They can be persuaded that they are alone in struggles that once had names and methods. Memory is how strategy survives violence. Memory is how warning outlives trauma. But memory is also how harm reproduces itself when its interpretation is left unexamined. Unprocessed memory becomes instruction. Without consent, trauma becomes tradition. Defense becomes doctrine. The political problem of memory is not merely what is remembered, but how memory is metabolized. Unmetabolized memory hardens into myth. Metabolized memory becomes guidance. A culture that cannot process its memory either repeats it unconsciously or weaponizes it deliberately. Collective memory must therefore be repaired, just as institutions must be repaired. Archives must be audited not only for accuracy, but for framing, for who is centered, for who is named, for who is rendered abstract. Silence is not emptiness in the record. It is evidence of displacement. Every blank space in the archive represents a labor that went uncredited, a cost that went unacknowledged, a suffering deemed too inconvenient for continuity. Memory as a political force also determines who is allowed to be innocent, who is granted the comfort of being past something, who is required to remain a living remainder of history. There is no shared present without a negotiated past. When the past is monopolized, the present fractures into competing realities that cannot recognize each other's origin stories. Reconciliation without memory is theater. Forgiveness without memory is erasure. Only memory allows accountability to persist beyond the lifespan of perpetrators. Yet memory alone does not guarantee justice.
It must be paired with interpretation that resists glorifying either the violence or the survival that followed it. A repaired memory does not sanctify suffering, it extracts from it the smallest possible dose of instruction without turning trauma into identity capital. We do not remember in order to suffer forever. We remember in order to shorten the lifespan of the pattern. The political future will be shaped less by what technologies we invent than by what histories we allow to remain legible, for invention without memory is merely the repetition of old structures with new surfaces. To protect memory as a political force is not to cling to grievance, it is to prevent amnesia from becoming the most efficient tool of domination. For the society that forgets how it was formed will accept almost any form as inevitable. And inevitability is the most effective ideology power has ever produced.
No harm ends where it began. It travels. It migrates through bloodlines, through zoning laws, through nervous systems, through what is permitted to be forgotten, and what is required to be remembered without remedy. Unfinished harm is the most efficient exporter of suffering. It requires no new perpetrators, only uninterrupted conditions. Every generation inherits not only resources but residue, not only wealth but distortion, not only language but the absences encoded inside that language. We call this inheritance circumstance, when we do not wish to call it consequence. Harm that is not repaired does not evaporate, it redistributes, it changes address, it appears as mood before it is recognized as history. Trauma rarely presents itself as narrative, it presents as threshold. What a body will tolerate, what a family will normalize, what a community will quietly organize itself around without needing to name the origin of the practice. Unfinished harm survives by becoming invisible. It dissolves into routine, it poses as culture, it masquerades as temperament. Children do not inherit the event, they inherit the adaptation to the event. They inherit the shortened horizon, they inherit the vigilance that no longer remembers what first demanded it. This is how a war becomes a parenting style. This is how displacement becomes an accent. This is how violence becomes administrative. The injustice of unfinished harm is not merely that it persists, it is that it recruits those who never consented into maintaining its architecture. People often ask why the past will not stay buried. The answer is simple. We never finish digging it out. Reparations are not payments for memory, they are interruptions of sequence. They are attempts to alter the probability distribution of who will be burdened next. Without repair, time itself becomes the carrier of harm, the calendar becomes the delivery system. The lie of inherited inevitability is that it frames continuity as fate instead of as a series of unchosen defaults that can, with sufficient courage, be renegotiated. Unfinished harm always argues for silence. Silence shortens the ledger, silence reduces the cost of continuation, silence converts dead into atmosphere. But atmosphere is not neutral. It teaches, it conditions, it scripts the emotional weather within which all later decisions will be made. A society that refuses to account for inherited harm will spend its future wealth on managing symptoms instead of altering root conditions. It will fund containment instead of transformation. It will confuse maintenance with justice. The ethical task of any living generation is not to feel guilty for the past, but to refuse to become its passive carrier. You are not responsible for what happened before you. You are responsible for whether it is allowed to finish happening through you. Every act of repair shortens the lifespan of a pattern. Every act of denial extends it. To inherit unfinished harm is not an accusation. It is a description of position. What you do with that position determines whether history continues forward as architecture or collapses backward into repetition. No generation escapes implication. Some inherit privilege wrapped in insulation. Some inherit injury wrapped in scarcity. Both inherit a choice about what they will pass along, still bleeding. The question is not whether the harm was yours. The question is whether the future will be forced to contend with it again because you declined to interrupt its momentum. History does not ask permission to move through living bodies. It only asks whether it will find resistance or resonance when it arrives. And that decision, quiet, personal, procedural, is where the inheritance of unfinished harm either begins to loosen or tightens its grip for another century.
Every generation reaches a moment where the simplest option is to transmit the damage forward rather than absorb it inward. This is not cruelty. It is efficiency learned from survival. Passing it on is easy. It travels on reflex, on tone of voice, on what is modeled under pressure, on what is excused when exhaustion becomes doctrine. Not passing it on requires discipline, and discipline is rarely inherited. To interrupt a pattern is to volunteer as its last carrier. It means the momentum does not disappear. It means it stops with you. This is why interruption feels heavier than continuation. Continuation diffuses cost across time. Interruption concentrates it in a single life. A system always prefers diffusion. A human nervous system prefers it too. Pain feels lighter when it can be deferred, but deferral is how inheritance becomes law. The discipline of not passing it on begins with recognizing transmission pathways. What you normalize when you are tired, what you excuse when you are afraid, what you replicate when you believe speed is mercy. Trauma does not need ideology to reproduce. It only needs permission to remain unexamined. Most harm is not delivered with intent, it is delivered with habit. It is couriered by people who would never choose to wound if the wound were visible in their hands. But inherited harm arrives pre-invisibilized. It is already disguised as how things are. Not passing it on requires the courage to be misunderstood by one's own lineage. It requires tolerating accusation from the past for refusing to behave like it. It requires becoming momentarily illegible to the very systems that once guaranteed belonging. This is why so many reforms stop at critique. Critique feels like action without demanding severance. Interruption demands repatterning. Repatterning demands temporary loneliness. The discipline of not passing it on is not performed in declarations. It is performed in micro-interruptions. When you choose not to raise your voice even though your history justifies it. When you choose not to disappear even though your training rewards it. When you choose not to conquer even though your inheritance taught you that conquest is safety. Each refusal destabilizes a lineage. The line does not break cleanly, it frays, it resists, it attempts to reassert its economy of harm through nostalgia, through guilt, through fear of extinction. Without this, it will whisper, you will not survive. But survival is not the highest ethical category. Continuity without injury is. The discipline of not passing it on does not purify you, it fatigues you. It requires metabolizing distortions that were never yours to generate but have become yours to terminate. You will not receive medals for this labor. Often you will receive suspicion. Sometimes you will receive exile. Almost always you will receive silence. History rarely applauds the point of interruption because interruption looks from the outside like disobedience rather than repair. But futures are structured by these unnoticed severances, by these quiet refusals to let pain remain efficient. Every lineage contains a moment where it either becomes more precise or more brutal. The difference is almost never ideological, it is procedural. Not passing it on does not mean forgetting, it means remembering without reenacting. It means carrying information forward without carrying the injury forward as instruction. This is the distinction between memory as warning and memory as weapon.
discipline of not passing it on is not sentimental forgiveness, it is logistical ethics. It is the engineering of new defaults inside old architectures. You do not end a cycle by opposing it. You end it by outgrowing the behaviors that kept it economically viable. Every time you absorb what could have been exported, you shorten a chain. Every time you metabolize what could have been transmitted, you alter a probability. This is not heroism, it is stewardship at the scale of blood and time. And it is the only form of power that does not need to announce itself in order to endure.
Every age waits for rescue. A figure. A technology, a movement large enough to lift consequence without acquiring transformation. Salvation is most attractive to those who cannot yet imagine that survival might demand participation. To be saved is to remain structurally passive inside one's own future. We tell stories of deliverance because they preserve the fantasy that responsibility can be outsourced without residue, that history can be corrected without being personally interrupted. The myth of rescue is the last comfort of those who sense collapse approaching, but do not yet wish to alter their posture toward it. Every savior narrative contains an unspoken contract. You changed the world for me, so I do not have to change with it. But no civilization has ever been rescued. They have only ever been metabolized. They survive not by intervention, but by the redistribution of burden onto enough bodies willing to remain awake inside continuation. What collapses is never merely infrastructure, it is always the illusion that stability absolves participation. To be saved is appealing because it promises asymmetry. Someone else bears the cost, someone else absorbs the risk, someone else carries the fracture through their own lifespan. But asymmetry is the root grammar of domination. Rescue reproduces it even when it claims to oppose it. You cannot be saved from a world you continue to authorize. You cannot be delivered from systems whose daily maintenance is composed of your habits. You cannot be liberated by structures that depend on your passivity to remain legible. The desire to be saved is not evidence of weakness, it is evidence of exhaustion, of being asked too long to carry weight without explanation, of being denied the language of agency until agency feels like another burden. But exhaustion does not negate responsibility, it only explains why responsibility feels unbearable. No savior can redistribute consequence at scale. Only participation can do that. No technology can absorb ethical weight, only collective revision of behavior can do that. No ideology can substitute for metabolic change inside how bodies relate to power and fear. We do not need to be saved. We need to be implicated. The terror of implication is that you cannot delegate it, you cannot monetize it, you cannot retreat from it without exporting it forward. Every generation that waited to be saved instead of learning how to share burden has left a heavier future behind it. To abandon the fantasy of rescue is to enter the discipline of responsibility without guarantee of reward, without assurance of success, without the narcotic of inevitability. This is the point at which many turn back, not because the task is impossible, but because it is no longer theatrical. There is no stage for implication, only the slow laboratory of daily continuity. To relinquish rescue is to accept that there will be no final intervention that excuses you from the consequences of what you continue to stand inside. But this is also where sovereignty begins. Sovereignty is not the capacity to dominate conditions. It is the capacity to remain present to what your existence is generating without demand and escape from it. You are not saved by being removed from the system. You are freed by understanding how the system is being reproduced through you and interrupting that sequence without expecting applause. The
The refusal to be saved is not resignation. It is the refusal of infantilization. It is the decision to stop waiting for legitimacy to arrive from outside your own coherence. No one is coming to lift the weight for us. That is not a threat. That is an invitation to adulthood at the scale of civilization. The future does not need heroes. It needs participants who no longer confuse rescue with responsibility. We were never meant to be saved. We were meant to become capable of living without declaring salvation as a substitute for change. This is not despair. This is the end of delegation. And only at the end of delegation does collective sovereignty become structurally possible.
Awakening does not arrive with freedom. It arrives with options, and options are heavier than cages because they remove the comfort of inevitability. Before, the story explained you. After, you must explain yourself. To awaken is not to be liberated. It is to be burdened with discernment. It is to lose the shelter of reflex. It is to stand at the threshold where compulsion once lived and feel the weight of having to choose instead. Ignorance carries you. Awareness requires you to walk. Every system prefers unconscious participants because unconscious participants confuse fate with design. They mistake momentum for destiny. They call repetition how things are and never test whether the structure could survive alteration. But once you see structure as constructed, you cannot unsee its contingency, and choice enters violently into the room. The burden of choice is not that it exists. It is that it cannot be unaccepted. You cannot return to ignorance without simulation. You cannot unknow what your perception has reorganized. You can only pretend, and pretense requires continuous maintenance. This is why denial is exhausting. It is not passive, it is an active labor of distortion. Choice requires you to recognize that every inaction is also an action, one that authorizes the existing trajectory to continue unopposed. Silence is not neutral. Non-intervention is policy without signature. Awakening confronts you with 1,000 small gates each day where no guard stands and no instruction is posted, only the quiet question: will you authorize this moment to proceed as it always has? The terror of choice is that it reveals how much of what we called systemic was really sedimented permission. Not permission in speech, but permission in repetition. Once you are awake, habit becomes a political act. The burden is not that you must be perfect. The burden is that you must be honest about leverage. Where you have it, where you do not, where you still pretend not to see it, because using it would disturb your comfort. Awakening does not require you to save the world. It requires you to stop pretending that your participation is incidental. You will be tempted to mistake scale for relevance, to believe that because your choice is small, it is therefore negligible. But systems are not moved by singular heroics. They are moved by aggregate permission. What you do repeatedly is always politically significant. The burden of choice is not heroic, it is tedious. It is the watching of yourself refuse the shortcut for the 100th time without receiving moral reinforcement. It is the slow erosion of alibis you once relied on to live without friction. You will mourn your former innocence, not because it was virtuous, but because it was light, because it did not require accounting, because it could move without narration. But innocence is not peace, it is insulation. And insulation always comes at someone else's expense. The burden of choice is the burden of adjacency. To know that what you authorize locally echoes structurally through networks you will never fully perceive. You cannot carry the whole weight of consequence, but you can no longer claim that the weight has nothing to do with you. This is the paradox of moral adulthood.
You are neither omnipotent nor innocent. You are simply implicated with options. Awakening does not tell you what to choose. It only strips you of the excuse that you had none. And this is why so many flee back into noise, not because they do not care, but because caring without anesthesia is metabolically expensive. Yet this is the actual threshold of freedom, not the absence of constraint, but the presence of authorship. You are not free because you can do anything. You are free because what you do now legitimately belongs to you. The burden of choice is the price of not being owned by the gravity of a noticed repetition. You were not awakened to be elevated. You were awakened to be accountable to the fact that what happens next will no longer be explainable as something that merely happened to you. This is not condemnation. This is jurisdiction. And jurisdiction is the final weight of being alive on purpose.
Collapse teaches many how to flee. Repair teaches fewer how to stay. But remaining is the rarest discipline of all. To remain is not to endure by inertia. It is to continue by choice. After the illusions have been stripped of their anesthetics, it is to stand inside consequence without demanding exemption from it. Most departures are disguised as wisdom. Most abandonments are justified as self-preservation. The language of escape is endlessly inventive because the nervous system is fluent in bargaining when belonging becomes labor. What it means to remain is to forfeit the fantasy that meaning will ever become effortless. It is to accept that coherence is maintained, not achieved once and archived. To remain is to consent to unfinished conditions without surrendering to them. It is to refuse both naive hope and curated despair. It is to operate in the narrower, more difficult interval, where responsibility does not feel redemptive, and extinction does not feel poetic. Remaining is not loyalty to structure. It is loyalty to consequence. It requires knowing which institutions must be outgrown, and which must be carried through their weakest seasons. It requires the sobriety to distinguish decay from discomfort, and patience from paralysis. To remain is to become uninterpretable to the cultures of immediacy. You will not look radical. You will not look liberated. You will look steady in a world trained to admire motion more than orientation. The economics of attention do not reward remaining. The aesthetics of collapse do not romanticize it. Remaining is too procedural for spectacle, too distributed for authorship, too slow for trend. Yet all futures depend on it. Every system that has ever survived its own disillusionment did so because enough people chose to remain without mistaking remaining for endorsement. They stayed conscious without being ornamental. They stayed critical without being corrosive. They stayed tired without exporting the fatigue as violence. Remaining is the quiet refusal to translate exhaustion into harm. It is the discipline of showing up after the moral dopamine has expired, after the slogans have been metabolized into maintenance, after belonging is no longer rewarded with applause, but only with additional obligation. To remain is not to cling. It is to participate with eyes open in conditions that no longer permit fantasy. You remain when you stop asking. Whether your presence will be validated and start asking. Whether your absence would leave something structural unattended. You remain when you understand that departure always feels like freedom in the short horizon and like erasure in the long one. Remaining teaches the deepest civic truth that continuity is not guaranteed by belief, only by procedure, only by repetition, only by the unspectacular fidelity to what still requires tending. There is no moral drama in remaining. There is only the slow accumulation of survivable futures. To remain is to accept that you will not be remembered as an origin. You will be remembered, if at all, as one of the quiet load bearers who did not let the structure fail at its most fatigued moments. No plaque is carved for this role. Only rooms that do not collapse. Only children who do not inherit the same emergency. Only systems that continue to breathe without knowing the names of those who kept them alive. Remaining is not a promise of triumph. It is a refusal of disappearance. You do not remain because you are certain. You remain because uncertainty has become ethically insufficient as an excuse for withdrawal. What it means to remain is to accept that your life will be used as a stabilizing weight rather than as a narrative crescendo. You will not break the cycle by spectacle. You will erode it by stain. And erosion, unlike revolution, does not look like victory until the wall is already gone. This is what it means to remain. To choose to be structurally present in a world that would rather you be symbolically absent. To keep coherence alive when charisma is cheaper. To hold continuity when departure would be easier to explain. There is no rescue after this point. There is only participation. And participation, fully informed, fully implicated, is the final form of freedom left to a species that has already learned what running cannot save.
We do not end this gathering in triumph. We end it in responsibility. What was spoken here cannot follow you without your consent. What was felt here cannot survive without your practice. What was named here does not become true because it was witnessed, only because it is carried. We release the fantasy that the world changes because we gathered. The world only changes if we leave this place altered enough to interrupt what we used to repeat. Let the noise stay behind. Let the NOSC stay behind. Let the alibis stay behind. Take only what you are willing to live with. May you feel the weight of your influence without mistaking it for burden. May you recognize your agency without demanding perfection. May you learn the pace that allows your nervous system to tell the truth without collapsing.
We do not hope for ease.
We do not pray for ease.
We pray for coherence.
We do not pray for victory. We pray for endurance with conscience. We do not pray for the storm to end. We pray to become the kind of shelter that does not export the storm forward. What was awakened here will try to return to sleep tomorrow. This is not a failure, this is the test. Go gently into the ordinary, that is where the work lives now. We did not gather to escape the world, we gathered to re-enter it, without lying to ourselves. This circle is open now, not closed, open into kitchens, into streets, into payroll offices, into classrooms, into bedrooms where decisions are made quietly. Carry what you can, lay down what you must, return when the spiral calls you back by practice, not by applause. This gathering is release, the responsibility is not. In this place, no one is rushing. Not because there is nothing to do, but because time is no longer treated as a threat. Food is grown within walking distance of apology. Children are not trained to be small. Elders are not treated as obsolete hardware. Conflict still exists, but it no longer pretends to be destiny. Here, attention is not continuously taxed here. Silence is not suspicious here. Labor is measured by recovery as well as output here. No one is required to break themselves to access dignity. This world did not arrive by revelation, it arrived by maintenance, by people who stayed when it was boring, by systems that learned how to repair themselves without scapegoats, by generations that chose to metabolize harm rather than institutionalize it. There are still storms here, there is still grief here, there is still loss. But there is no mythology left that pretends suffering is the price of meaning. No one here thinks the work is finished. That is why it is stable. This place does not call itself perfect. It calls itself in progress with integrity. And you do not travel to this world, you assemble it. Each time you interrupt what you were trained to continue. This is not a prophecy. It is a rehearsal. I'm not gonna thank you for being here. Not because I'm ungrateful, but because gratitude implies this was optional, this wasn't optional, this was necessary. Something in us needed to be in the same room at the same time, without pretending everything is fine. You don't owe this music anything, you don't owe me anything, you don't owe this moment a memory, but you do owe your own life an honest continuation. Nothing you felt in here will automatically survive the door, that's just physics. Rooms don't travel, only habits do. Whatever shifted tonight will immediately be tested by traffic, by bills, by your family, by your phone, by the version of you that doesn't want to change because it's tired of changing. That doesn't mean tonight was fake, it just means today was not the destination. You don't have to become better people. You don't have to become anything impressive. You just have to become slightly more honest about which parts of your life are actually yours and which parts you've been running on autopilot because no one ever taught you how to slow down without falling apart. I'm not interested in saving anyone. I don't believe in saviors anymore. I believe in neighbors. I believe in people who notice. I believe in people who interrupt small things before they become generational disasters. You don't need to change the world, that's a fantasy that burns people out fast. You just need to change what you keep repeating once no one is watching. That's where the real architecture is. If tonight made you feel seen, good. If it made you uncomfortable, also good. If it made you want to go quiet for a while, that might be the best outcome of all. You don't need to talk about this on the way home. You don't need to post about it. You don't need to explain it to anyone who wasn't here. Let it stay unbrained. Let it stay unsolved. The world is loud enough already. If you leave this room and go right back to exactly what you were doing before, I'm not here to shame you. That's how nervous systems work. Change always lags behind recognition. Just don't lie to yourself about it. That's the only real crime. And if weeks from now you catch yourself responding differently to one small moment, one argument, one impulse, one chance to disappear or dominate, and you choose something quieter instead, then this whole night did its job without ever needing credit. We're not closing anything here, we're handing it back. Take what's useful, leave what isn't, but don't pretend you weren't here when you were. That's all.